Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the D and WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the third part of What If Deku became the Midnight Vigilante. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Todoroki is usually someone inexpressive. Like, no one in the room has ever seen him show any kind of expression beyond his usual disinterest. So imagine everyone's shock when he just fell to the floor and started rolling around laughing as if he had just heard the best joke of the century. Hitoshi is sure that this has something to do with the guy who entered the stadium together with Nimuri-sensei. He definitely looks uncomfortable wearing that tight outfit that looked like a male version of Midnight's costume. Wait, is he wearing heels? Hey, isn't that the guy who takes the heroics class with us? Kaminori asked. The one who showed up with Toga. Oh, right. Tauya, isn't it? Kirishima replied. Isn't he Todoroki's brat? Oh. He snapped his fingers, then looked back at Todoroki. I can't be believed, Todoroki said while wheezing like a tea kettle. TTH, they managed to get him to wear us so something other than jeans and an oversized hoodie. Meanwhile, Tauya was alternating between sending his brother the dirtiest look he could muster and glaring at Midnight. Good thing he doesn't have laser vision. Midnight, completely unfazed by the situation, cracks her whip to get the students' attention. At least Todoroki has stopped laughing, although he is still shaking, trying to hold himself together while avoiding looking at his brother. Hitoshi turns his attention back just in time to hear Present Mike finish announcing the classes and pass the voice to Midnight, because apparently, someone thought it was a good idea to put the 18-plus hero as the host of an event full of hormonal teenagers. Nenzu is a sadist. Now for the student pledge. Welcome to the stage, the person who scored the highest on the entrance exam. Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo takes the stage with all the confidence he constantly exudes. Hitoshi has mixed feelings about the angry Pomeranian. Izuku explained his story a few weeks ago, and Hitoshi is not petty enough to hold the sins of a 5-year-old child over his head, especially since Izuku has already forgiven him. But on the other hand, Bakugo definitely needs to have some humility too. He is powerful but not invincible. I just want to say, Bakugo starts as soon as he gets to the microphone, that I'm going to win. The booing starts instantly, but Bakugo ignores it and smirks into the microphone. He has just painted a gigantic target on his back, and he is loving every second of it. Well, no one can say that this one lacks confidence. Izashi's sweat dropped. Let's just see if he has the skills to back up his claims, Shouta said in his usual bored voice. All right, let's put this show on the road, Izashi announced. Now, my fair Midnight, what will be the first event? I'm glad you asked, gentlemen, Nimuri said, then cracked her whip again. Then a giant wheel was raised from the ground and started spinning to sort out what the first event would be. It was just a show for the audience. The 3 events have already been decided in advance, and all the teachers already know. But for the students, it will be a surprise. An obstacle course. Izashi cheered. 4 kilometers, several obstacles along the way. Who can overcome the challenges and finish first? The students all began to mingle in the starting line, and Shouta took this moment to check his phone one more time. Damn, still nothing from Izuku. So, Eraser, what do you think the students should pay attention to first? Izashi asked. The tunnel, Shouta replied dryly. Could you elaborate? Izashi asked after a few seconds of silence. No, Shouta replied. Eloquent as always. Izashi muttered. All right, listeners, let's put this show on the road. Shouta glanced once again at his phone. Still nothing. Stay safe, Izuku, he muttered to himself and then turned back to pay attention to the event just in time to see Todoroki literally freeze the competition. Zuko is fast. He has spent several years training his mobility, both in his time as a vigilante and during his training with Schwa. In the air, he is second only to Hawks. But even with all his speed, he cannot teleport. Getting from point A to point B takes time. And even though he can make this 5-minute travel in just 2, it still feels like it's taking hours. When he finally arrives at the place where Ingenium's signal had stopped, he quickly feels the panic coming on. No sign of Stentol, no sign of Ingenium. Looking at the ground, Izuku finds a small piece of a tracker device. Damn it, Ingenium. That's why I told you to put this under your helmet, Kuzu yelled, then tuned into his own comms. This is duality. We found Ingenium's tracker, Zuko continued. It is in the middle of the street, and there are no signs of combat. He must have lost it in his pursuit. Roger that, one of the support heroes answered. We are sending the other psychics to expand the search area. Perfect, we'll leave the tracker here. It has been about 2 minutes since the signal stopped moving. From their speed, we would say to make a search radius of 1 to 1.5 kilometers. Kuzu replied. We'll resume our search from the sky. If we find him, we will activate our tracker. Keep the paramedics ready, Zuko said, already taking flight. And remember to pay close attention to the alleys. That's where he strikes. Roger that. The support said, "Good luck, Duality." "Thank you," they replied together. Duality out. Wasting no time, Zuko sent out the right camera and let Kuzu watch the images as he flew and checked alley by alley. "Where are you, Ingenium?" 10 million points. That's a lot of points. Even if you count all the other points combined, it won't reach that total. In other words, whoever has that band is guaranteed to be the first place. Well, in a cavalry battle, the best thing to do is to recruit good allies. But since Shadow is basically the target, most of the students are avoiding him. This could be a problem. "Hey, Todoroki," Kaminari calls him. Shadow turns around and sees the blonde man approaching with Tokoyami and Shinsu right behind him. What do they want? They are against each other, aren't they? "Suu," Kaminari starts. "I was thinking, since, we are all," Hitoshi puts a hand on his mouth to interrupt his rambling. "We will face each other, and that is obvious. But we have the same sensei. Since this is a group event, why don't we take the opportunity to show what he has taught us?" Shinsu explained. "The last event will probably be one-on-one fights. But this event is a good chance to show our teamwork." Shadow thought about it for a moment. Shinsu has a good point. They have never worked as a team before, but Izuku always emphasizes how important teamwork is. "If we are going to do that," Shadow says, "let's make it memorable." "Oh, I like how you think." Shinsu smirks. "You are the rider." "No, I'll be on the left and Kaminari on the right. We'll take care of the defense," Todoroki explains, which leaves Tokoyami in the front. "Dark Shadow is best suited to steal points after all," Shinsu says. "Much of the class still underestimates you, but you are the most agile," Kaminari says, "and you can dominate the mind of anyone foolish enough to approach carelessly." Tokoyami adds his 2 cents. "So you should be the rider." "Perfect," they say together. "All right, time's up," Midnight announces. "Let's start the cavalry battle. Time to make chaos." Dark Shadow chirps, and they take positions. "IZUCREW, assemble." Oh, these 4 teamed up. "Prepare for chaos." Shout aside. "Looks like your problem child's problem children teamed up." Hazashi grinned. "All right, listeners, let's start the cavalry battle. We have a few interesting teams in the game. Let's see what they'll do." Shouta could have sworn he saw the eyes of these 4 gleaming with mischief. What are these problem children planning? As soon as Midnight announces the start of the game, more than half of the teams immediately zeroes onto Team Shinsu, obviously aiming at the 10 million headband. But if only it were that easy. Todoroki steps on the ground, hurling his ice in all directions. But unlike the indiscriminate attack of the first event, this one had a target. As the ice spreads, he steps with his other foot, launching a wave of fire that melts the ice, creating a massive water puddle. Kaminari goes into action right away by rubbing his hands together like a defibrillator, and then pressing his palms into the water on the ground. To conclude the attack, Dark Shadow shields the team because, apparently, shadows don't conduct electricity. The light from the attack stuns him, but he resists. Impressing Shouta is difficult, but even he admits that it was a nice combo. And with this Shinsu team combo, all the reckless attackers who ran after the 10 million points without strategy are stunned. Hazashi announces. But look, they are not finished yet. Now, Team Shinsu is running between the stunned teams while Dark Shadow steals their bands. But they already have the 10 million points. They don't need more. A logical strategy. Even with the 10 million points, it is always good to have a backup in case they end up losing it. Shouta replied. "Is that a compliment I hear?" Hazashi smirked. Shouta ignored it and looked back at the arena. Team Shinsu had 4 matching grins. Very familiar grins. "Oh god, the rat is multiplying," Shouta said under his breath. It is obvious that they learned that grin from Izuku. But the one who corrupted Shouta's son was the rat. And look at that. The other teams have started to recover from this initial attack and are already moving again. Hazashi said, "The cavalry battle is just beginning." Hitoshi smiled as he fooled yet another team of idiots. It's amazing how a simple jab at their pride and they'll respond to anything. The most impressive part is that the Bakugo team has not tried to attack them head-on so far. Apparently, the Pomeranian has decided to go after the copycat from Class B. "And 2 more minutes, Mike-sensei announced." Hitoshi grinned and looked at Todoroki, who nodded at him. "Time for chaos." Hitoshi grinned as he took off the 10 million points headband. "Hey, guys," he called, and everyone looked at him. "Catch." He threw the headband over his shoulder. All the teams started running. But before anyone could get there, Todoroki launched the biggest attack Hitoshi had ever seen him make toward the headband. The other teams had to shield their eyes. The temperature in the arena dropped to the point that most of them began to shiver. But what is that? Team Shinsu literally buried the 10 million points in a giant iceberg. Mike-sensei announced. "Is that even allowed?" "No rule says that it's not." Midnight shrugged. "Problem children," Aizawa-sensei said. And Hitoshi has been living with the teacher long enough to recognize the fondness in his voice. "I wonder if anyone can get through the iceberg and get the points," Dark Shadow said. "Nah, no one here is capable." The provocation worked, and half the team started attacking the iceberg while they quietly moved out of the way now that they were no longer the primary target. Tunnel vision will not help them, Takoyami said. Time for the final assault. Saying this, Dark Shadow immediately lunged at the same time as Hitoshi threw his scarf, grabbing as many headbands as possible while Mike-sensei began the final countdown. 10, 9, 8. The teams attacking the iceberg made a desperate last push to try to get through. After all, most of them had 0 points. 7, 6, 5, 0. Look, there's Bakugo, blasting himself towards Hitoshi to try and grab his headbands. 4, 3, 2. Bakugo reaches his right arm to attack Hitoshi. 1, and it's over. He falls face first into the dirt. All right, the cavalry battle is over, Midnight announces. In the end, no one had the 10 million points. Now, let's take a look at the scoreboard. Mike says, in first place, Team Shinsu, consisting of Shinsu Hitoshi, Takoyami Fumikage, Todoroki Shoto, and Kaminari Denki. The audience cheered as Hitoshi made an exaggerated bowing motion. In second place, Team Bakugo, consisting of Bakugo Katsuki, Kirishima Ijiru, Ashido Mina, and Shiro Hanta. In third place, Team Asui, consisting of Asui Tsuyu, Ida Tenya, Uraraka Ochako, and Hatsume Mei. The audience decreased in volume when Team Bakugo was announced but came back in full force when Team Asui was announced. And last but not least, in fourth place, we have the Yaoyorozu team, consisting of Yaoyorozu Momo, Shaoji Mezu, and Aoyama Yuuga. And since this team had only 3 members, one of the members of the 5th place team will go to the next round. So, Team Monoma choose a member. After a short discussion, they decide that Monoma will move on to the next round. Alright, the third event will start after lunch period. Midnight says, you heard it. For those of you who didn't pass, don't worry. We still have many recreational activities that everyone can participate in. As for the third event, these are the brackets. Mike said, we'll be right back after the break. Mike announced, then turned off the microphones. Hitoshi accompanied his friends to the cafeteria to get food, but on the way, he checked his phone. Izuku didn't send any messages, not that he expected anything. Even if Izuku is back by now, they surely wouldn't want to distract Hitoshi from the event. They are considerate like that. Still, at least an I'm fine would be nice to receive. Hitoshi is worried about them. Hitoshi sighs and then runs to catch up with his friends. He hopes Izuku will be proud of the chaos they have created here. Found them, Kuzu announces as they fly through the alleys. They are on the camera. Let's go. Zuku says, status, Ingenium is down. We need to hurry. Kuzu replies, Stento is monologuing now, but as soon as he's done, he'll want to finish the job. Then we better be faster. Hang in there, Ingenium. Shiro Hanta versus Todoroki Shoto. Being the first to fight, Shoto stepped into the ring as soon as he heard his name being announced. Shiro was already in position and prepared for the fight. Well, prepared is not quite the right word. Anyone with eyes could see that he was sweating bullets. As Mike-sensei introduced the fight, Shoto wasn't paying attention. Shiro flashed him a shy smile. I don't think I can defeat you, Shiro said, but I'm not about to give up without trying. Very well, Shoto nodded to him. I respect you, and for that I'll give it my all. From Class 1A Todoroki Shoto versus Shiro Hanta, also from Class 1A, Midnight announced, then cracked her whip. Start. Shiro immediately lunged at Shoto, throwing his tape to try to trap him. Shoto smiled and stomped hard on the ground with his right foot. Immediately the ice took over the rink, burying Shiro in a huge iceberg. Shoto blinked a few times. All right, I overdid it a little, he said. Shiro, can you move? Midnight asked. Shiro tried to break free from the iceberg, but he gave up and shook his head after a few seconds. Todoroki Shoto is the winner. The crowd began to shout encouragement to Shiro as Shoto approached and began to melt the ice slowly so as not to cause a thermal shock to his classmate, who was shivering from the cold. Sorry about that, Shoto said with a small smile. And no problem, dude, Shiro said. TT, thanks for TT taking MSC seriously. He gave Shoto a trembling grin. Can my pretty assistant help us here? Midnight said with a smirk. Talia climbed into the ring, flipping her off on the way, and started helping melt the ice. He almost fell 3 times. Seriously, how the hell did someone manage to make him wear heels? More importantly, how is that person still alive? Shoto had to hold back from laughing again. As soon as he managed to get Shiro off the ice, he supported his classmate and took him to the infirmary. He felt the temperature rise and saw a flash of blue behind him as he left. Your brother is scary, Shiro said, looking over his shoulder. Maybe, Shoto hummed, but after today I have blackmail material for the rest of his life. Shiro laughed, but Shoto was being completely serious. Kaminari Denki versus Yaoyorozu Momo. Boy, wasn't that a little bit too much, Todoroki? Denki was watching the result of the first fight on the small TV in his waiting room while waiting to be called for his fight. Todoroki certainly raised the audience's expectation level with this power act. Unfortunately, no other student has the raw power to compete with this, except perhaps Takoyami on a moonless night. But well, before worrying about Todoroki, he has to win his own fight. Momo is a powerhouse in her own right. The fight won't last long, but it will undoubtedly be tough. Mike-sensei starts announcing the next fight, and Denki heads to the arena. For a moment, he looks at the case by the door but decides that it's not time yet. Besides, against someone like Momo, that's not what he needs. When Mike announced him, Momo was already in the arena waiting for him. Denki puts on his usual friendly smile and walks up, shooting finger pistols at Momo. No hard feelings no matter who wins, right? Denki asks. Of course not. Momo smiles. Then as Midnight starts counting, she takes her battle instance. Start. Midnight cracks her whip. Denki immediately shoots toward Momo, trying to prevent her from having time to create anything. Covering his fist with electricity, Denki sends a punch, which Momo blocks with her right arm. To Denki's surprise, she doesn't even seem to feel the shock that would normally knock anyone out. Focusing on her arms, he realizes that they are covered by something. Oh, insulating gloves, clever one. Momo quickly creates a staff and lunges against Denki, who begins to dodge a hail of attacks. She has the advantage in range and is protected against long-range electrical discharge. Denki also can't just unload everything and hope for the best. If he short-circuits his brain, it's gone. However, one does not survive 3 weeks of Spartan training with Aizawa without learning new tricks. With a smile, he waits for Momo to make a lunge with the staff and holds the staff between his arm and his back. When Momo tries to pull the stick, he just lets it go, which makes her lose her balance since she was expecting resistance. By the time she recovers, Denki is already in front of her, placing his hands on either side of her head and releasing a small electrical discharge. Momo unceremoniously falls to the ground, unconscious. Yaoyorozu is unable to continue. Kaminari Denki is the winner, Midnight announces. Kaminari looks around, blinking. Did he really beat Momo? The audience's cheers say he did it. Smiling, with much more sincerity now, Denki raises his hands in celebration. He really beat one of the best students in the class. When the medbots come up in the arena, he helps put Momo on the stretcher and follows them to the infirmary. He only suffered a few minor bruises that Recovery Girl healed without serious problems. Momo should wake up in half an hour or so, all things considered. This is one of the sports festivals with the lowest injury rates so far, and RG certainly appreciates it. Ada Tenya vs. Hatsume. Poor Tenya ends up being tricked and used as a test dummy to show off Hatsume's various inventions in the longest fight of the entire festival. After this, Mei leaves the ring, and Tenya moves on to the next round. Ashido Mina vs. Asui Tsuyu. Unfortunately for Tsu, she ended up with probably the worst matchup possible at this festival. Mina knows her too well. As the fight begins, Mina covers herself with acid, a simple acid that makes the body numb when in contact with the skin, and that works on Tsu's tongue, without being able to use his greatest asset. This fight quickly becomes a clash of agility. Between Mina's fluid dance-like movements and Tsu's leaps, the fight ends when, in a moment of carelessness, Tsu slips on the trail of acid that Mina has left on the floor, and this opening allows Mina to push her out of the ring. Aoyama Yuuga vs. Takoyami Fumikage. Dark Shadow. Fumikage called on the way to the arena. I think it's better if you stay hidden during this fight. But Fumi, why? Dark Shadow asked, sounding slightly hurt. It's not your fault, Fumikage replied, petting the shadow creature's beak. But Aoyama's quirk is literally a light laser beam. The majority of the class has not yet realized our weakness. Isn't it better to hide it a little longer? You. The quirk started but stopped mid-phrase. You're right, but will you be all right? You protected me my whole life, Fumikage said. Let me protect you for once. Dark Shadow squeaked and curled around Fumikage. All right, but you better win, Dark Shadow replied. Otherwise, I will tell everyone about that time you cried when that egg cart toppled over. Fumikage gasped. You wouldn't dare. Just try me. Dark Shadow. I was 5. Fumikage argued. My cousins. What are you all doing? Someone call an ambulance. Dark Shadow mocked then started laughing. Fumikage glared at his quirk for a good 5 seconds before snorting and starting to laugh too. You are terrible, Dark Shadow, he said, shaking his head. And you love me, Dark Shadow replied. Fumikage did not grace him with an answer. Instead, he steeled his expression and said in a serious tone, Don't worry, Dark Shadow, Fumikage said right as he was about to step into view. Light shall never conquer the darkness. Fumikage steps into the arena as Present Mike announces it. Aoyama was already there, spinning and waving to the audience. When he notices Fumikage, he turns and gives a salute which Fumikage responds with a slight bow. 3, 2, 1, Midnight cracks her whip. Start. Aoyama wastes no time firing his laser at Fumikage, but, already expecting it, the crow dodges it with a step to the side. Aoyama tries again, but Fumikage dodges in the same way. They do this dance for a few minutes. Aoyama shoots, and Fumikage dodges, but he doesn't move closer to try to attack. Fumikage realizes that his classmate is starting to get frustrated, and his attacks are becoming more frequent and desperate, until Aoyama makes a mistake and shoots a laser for more than a second. He instantly realizes his mistake as he drops to his knees, covering his stomach with his arms. Seizing the opportunity, Takoyami quickly covers the distance between them and dropkicks Aoyama right in the face. The impact is enough to send them out of the ring. Still, even if it wasn't, Aoyama doesn't get up. Aoyama is out of bounds. Takoyami Fumikage is the winner. Midnight announces. Dark Shadow appears and wraps himself around Fumikage, screeching his cheers. What a mad banquet of darkness, Fumikage says as he steps out of the ring and helps put Aoyama on the stretcher. But despite his words, anyone could notice the smile on his face. Kirishima Ijiru vs. Shoji Mezu. This fight can be described in one word: brutal. It is no secret that, in terms of physical strength, Kirishima and Shoji are probably the strongest in the class. Kirishima is basically a wall, while Shoji attacks like a machine gun with his 6 extra arms. In the end, Kirishima's toughness held up well, but as the saying goes, water dripping day by day wears the hardest rock away. When Kirishima finally reached his limit and had to let go of the stiffening, Shoji grabbed him and threw him out of the ring, winning the match. Monoma Nito vs. Shinsu Hitoshi. It must be karma. It's the only explanation. Only karma explains Hitoshi having to face the biggest asshole he's met since he came to UA right in the first round. Some bored god wants to make Hitoshi taste his own medicine. Now, Hitoshi knows that he is also an asshole. His quirk depends on making people respond, and the best way to do that is to get under their skin. But even Hitoshi has a line, and taunting someone using a traumatic experience definitely crosses that line. When Hitoshi climbs into the ring, Monoma is already waiting for him with his bastard smirk on his face. Hitoshi ignores Present Mike's introduction, accessing what he knows about his opponent. Monoma's quirk is some kind of copy quirk. Hitoshi saw Monoma copy explosion and hardening during the cavalry battle. He seems limited to 3, maybe 4 quirks at a time and must have a time limit on the copies. 5 minutes, 10. He doesn't show any physical indication of which quirks he has copied at the moment. 3, 2, 1, midnight counts. Start. Monoma stomps hard on the ground, which softens as if it was made of mud. The trail reaches Hitoshi, who begins to sink as if in quicksand. Nice quirk. Izuku would be having a field day here. Hitoshi smirks and looks Monoma dead in the eyes. Is that all you got? Hitoshi asks. For someone so determined to prove himself superior to us, you are not all that. Oh, I'll show you who's the best. Got him. Hitoshi smirks. Hitoshi sends his scarf towards Monoma, but it hits some kind of invisible wall and stops. Oh, can't the great Classa get past my barrier? Monoma taunts. Why don't you give up? You are so dumb that you don't even know that you have already lost. Hitoshi says, smirking. He waves his hands in some weird motions just to confuse his opponent. What or why Monoma starts. Sleep, Hitoshi says, snapping his fingers. He grabs Monoma's mind right after the snap. Now, you will carefully return the floor to normal, Hitoshi says. And Monoma steps on the floor again, hardening it back to normal and releasing Hitoshi. Great job, now turn around and walk out of bounds. Monoma wordlessly turns around and walks out of the ring. Monoma is out of bounds. The winner is Shinsu Hitoshi. Midnight announces. Hitoshi makes an extremely exaggerated spin and bows towards the announcing booth. He hears a snort for a second before Mike starts talking again. He starts to leave but then remembers Monoma. He raises his right arm for all to see and snaps his fingers, releasing his control over Monoma. Better luck next time, Hitoshi says as he leaves the arena. Asshole. Uraraka Ochako vs. Bakugo Katsuki. Let no one ever underestimate Uraraka again. Launching a meteor shower on the enemy was a genius strategy. And frankly, if her opponent was anyone else, it probably would have worked. Unfortunately, against Bakugo's immense firepower, that strategy was not enough. Still, anyone observant enough would be able to notice how much Bakugo's hands were shaking after the fight. This match was much more even than most people think. Alas, Bakugo won, so he'll be Hitoshi's next opponent. Joy. Shouta feels a shiver run down his spine and checks his phone once more. Still nothing from Izuku. Damn, he almost slams his head on the sound equipment in his frustration. Damn it, kid. You better be alright, Shouta whispers as Hisashi announces the next matchups. 3 arrows fly aiming directly at the shoulders of the noseless man, who is about to turn Ingenium into a cosplay of the Excalibur stone. Izuku knows how potentially lethal that attack was. But if there's one thing he's discovered about Stendhal, it's that anything less won't be enough to hold him back. And as expected, Stendhal notices the attack and blocks the arrows while retreating further down the alley. He looks over and soon notices Izuku, who has positioned himself in front of Ingenium. A kid, he asks, then frowns. No, you're not just a kid. Duality, right. Well, Kuzu says, injecting as much cheerfulness in his voice as possible. Stendhal has heard of us. As they talk, Zuko discreetly sends a camera to examine Ingenium. He's conscious, but he seems to be paralyzed. Seems like Izuku's theory about Stendhal's quirk was right. He really can paralyze his victims, but what is the trigger? Stendhal, no one called me that for a good while. Stendhal says, you were a vigilante like me. Why protect this fake? I have met many fake heroes, Stendhal. Zuko explains calmly. A few weeks ago I had the pleasure of sending Endeavor to Tartarus. But Ingenium is definitely not one of the fakes. Of course he is. Stendhal yells. You know, we always admired you. Zuko says, ignoring what Stendhal just said. When we started as vigilantes, your name on the streets was like a legend. Everyone spoke with wonder and admiration of the mysterious vigilante who was in a different place every week. But if there was one thing they all shared, it was, when Stendhal was in the area, civilians felt safer than any hero made them feel. Kuzu replied, unfortunately this legendary vigilante disappeared shortly after we started, but we always wanted to meet you. When the hero killer began to act, we were in denial for quite a while. Zuko continued, because surely someone so heroic would not have simply become a villain out of nowhere. Ever since we became heroes, we have been looking for you. Kuzu said, the Vigilante Project accepted us, it would surely accept you too. But then the hero killer appeared. My dad was the teacher of several of your victims. Zuko explained, he doesn't like to show it, but I know how much he mourned the death of each of them. What is your point? Are you trying to convince me to give up my crusade? Stendhal asked, raising his katana. These fake heroes are the reason for society being what it is today. I won't stop until I kill them all. The only one who can kill me is the one true hero, All Might. Yeah, I figured that was the case, but I had to try. Zuko shrugged. You are one of the few good heroes, child. Leave and I'll let you live. By doing this I will be abandoning Ingenium. That would definitely make me a fake hero. Real heroes don't question who they save, they just save. Kuzu said. Besides, we have a reason to talk so much. Zuko smiled innocently. Each second we keep you talking is one more second for the other heroes to get here. Kuzu grinned. This was enough push for Stendhal, who immediately charged at Izuku with his katana. Izuku narrowly dodged the attack. He felt the katana scratch his chest, but fortunately not deep enough to draw blood. In one-on-one, you certainly beat us, Zuko said, especially since we are protecting a hostage. But do you have time for that? Kuzu asked. The heroes already have our location. They will be here any second now. As if on cue, they hear footsteps approaching the alley, and at this moment, Izuku makes a mistake. For just a second, he takes his eyes off Stendhal, but that is long enough to lose sight of him. And when he least expects it, Stendhal is in front of him, swinging his katana in an arc and hitting Izuku in the stomach. They're here. Someone calls and rushes into the alley. TCH, you have escaped this time, Ingenium, Stendhal says, looking at the fallen hero. But there won't be a next time. With that, Stendhal runs out of the alley, easily missing the heroes into the city. Izuku pressed their fingers to his stomach, and when they looked, they were red with blood. Looking down, they see the blood quickly dripping onto the floor. Damn, Zuko says, pressing his back against the wall and sliding to the floor. Dad is going to kill us. Kuzu completes. As they hear footsteps approaching and paramedics running, his vision darkens. The last thing they see before losing consciousness is Ingenium's haunted expression as he says something that Izuku cannot hear. Todoroki Shouto versus Kaminari Denki. Kaminari and Todoroki look at each other face to face. Shouto can easily see how nervous Kaminari is even though he disguises it well. Shouto can also see what was in the case that Kaminari has been so secretive with his colleagues until now. Of course, Schwa already knew what was there. He was one of those who approved the gear. But it doesn't change the fact that Kaminari has been acting as if it were a state secret. Now, as Midnight prepares to start the fight, Kaminari, positioned with a sword in his right hand and a shield in his left, prepares for the fight. If you pay attention, you can see the signature on the shield saying Hatsum Industries. Todoroki curiously observes the weapons in his classmates' hands. Shouto can feel the same curiosity emanating from the rest of his Hell class. And being honest, he will never admit it out loud. He is curious too. Shouto has seen the diagrams and knows how this weapon works. But knowing and seeing it in action is quite different. 3, 2, 1, start. Midnight cracks her whip. As soon as the fight starts, Todoroki opens up with the same attack he used against Zero in an attempt to end it as quickly as soon possible. Kaminari, with sparks dancing in his right hand, inserts the sword, which absorbs the electricity into the shield. The shield detaches from his hand and molds itself into the sword's blade as Kaminari swings it over his shoulder and slams it down hard, releasing all the accumulated electricity in a shockwave that crashes into the ice. The resulting explosion sends out a mixture of steam and cold air that obscures the arena from the audience. When the cloud began to dissipate, Kaminari was in the same place. The sword and shield now fused together as one long axe. Todoroki was at the edge of the ring. the impact not throwing him out only because he managed to create a wall of ice in time. Todoroki throws another wave of ice, and this time Kaminari swerves to the side and swings the axe over his head, hitting the wall of ice. When he uses his electricity, the blade starts spinning like a chainsaw, cutting through the ice easily and clearing the way. Kaminari runs at Todoroki with his axe in hand, but Todoroki raises his left hand, throwing a wave of flames at him. Kaminari stops, puts his arm over the axe blade, and pulls the handle. The blade returns to its shield form, and Kaminari quickly defends the flames while continuing to run toward Todoroki. When he's practically on top of Todoroki, Kaminari tries to bash him with his shield, but Todoroki jumps to the side. Todoroki tries once again to bury him in an iceberg, but this was his biggest mistake. Kaminari, already anticipating this move, had already started to load the sword and insert it into the shield again. Repeating his first attack, he discharges all the accumulated electricity that crashes into the ice, generating an explosion even bigger than the first. When the fog cleared, Kaminari was halfway across the ring with his sword stuck in the ground for support. Todoroki was outside the ring. Todoroki is out of bounds. Kaminari Denki is the winner. Midnight announces. Kaminari looks around, taking a few seconds to realize that, yes, he has indeed won, and then raises his sword in celebration as the audience cheers. Todoroki stands up and watches for a few seconds, clearly disappointed by his defeat, but he doesn't look angry. He gives a little smile before leaving the arena. Ada Tenya vs. Ashido Mina. From the creators of the exit sign Ada, we present Bull. The only thing missing was that Ashido was wearing a red cape for this fight to be considered a real bullfight. Ada, being the straightforward person that he is, constantly charged toward Ashido with all his speed while the dancer calmly dodged each attack. He really needs to pay more attention to the space around him, though. Ada didn't realize he was being led out of the ring until he was announced the loser of the fight after one of his charges. Takoyami Fumikage vs. Shoji Mezu. Bad matchup for Shoji. As strong as his 6 arms are, Dark Shadow feels no pain and doesn't back down from the rain of blows, just slowly pushing Shoji out of the arena. Unfortunately, Shoji is not fast enough to avoid the shadow and loses the duel. Between this fight and the next, Shouda's phone starts ringing, and Shouda gets up to answer it without even checking who it is. Hizashi doesn't even bat an eye as Shouda runs out of the room. Hey, Shu, Tensei. It's been years since Tensei called. They always talk by message. Tensei. Shouda cannot hide the concern in his voice. Tensei was commanding the operation for Stain's capture. If he is calling instead of Izuku, it means, what happened? Is Izuku fine? Stain escaped. Tensei sighs in tortuous seconds of silence that feel more like hours as he tries to think of what to say next. And Izuku is in emergency surgery. Where? Shouda can't hide the desperation in his voice. He barely hears Tensei say Hasu's General Hospital. I'm on my way. And he hangs the call. Shinsu Hitoshi vs. Bakugo Katsuki. As soon as Bakugo climbs into the ring, he puts his hand in his ears and pulls something out of them. Hitoshi watches curiously but doesn't comment. Prepared to die, extra. Bakugo sneers. I won't be the one dying here, Kakin. Hitoshi replies, but surprisingly, Bakugo doesn't say anything else. 3, 2, 1, start. Midnight cracks the whip. Bakugo propels himself onto Hitoshi with his blasts and starts the fight with a right hook. By now, everyone in the class has probably figured out this habit of his. Hitoshi owes himself and responds with a judo throw over his shoulder that he has been on the other side so many times. This won't work, Kakin. Hitoshi provokes, but Bakugo ignores it. How the heck he didn't reply yet? Since when can the Pomeranian stay quiet? It's like he's not even hearing. Wait. Hitoshi makes a sign with his hand, fingerspelling one word. Bakugo simply flips him off. Fuck me. Of course you are deaf. Hitoshi signs. How come no one noticed until now? Bakugo stops his attacks for a moment and shrugs before signing back. I'm sure Izu knew. He's the one who used to tell me I would go deaf because of my quirk. Then he smirks. And it's not my fault none of you extras have eyes. My hearing aids aren't even discreet. Of course. Hitoshi shakes his head. Alright, plan B then. Then he quickly takes up his stance and throws the scarf at Bakugo. Bakugo answers the attack with a blast towards the ground that propels him upwards out of range of the fabric. Hitoshi smirks and locks eyes with Bakugo as the blonde dives at him. Straightening his stance, Hitoshi dodges the attack with a sidestep jump and takes the opportunity to land a knee on Bakugo's chest. Bakugo recovers quickly and attacks again without giving Hitoshi time to breathe. Hitoshi manages to avoid direct damage from most explosions but still suffers from the heat. There's no way to escape this without at least a few burns. Bakugo attacks again, but this time Hitoshi is prepared. He trims the palm strike followed by an explosion and holds Bakugo by the wrist, throwing him over his shoulder and onto the floor. Without giving him time to recover, Hitoshi throws the scarf again, and this time he manages to trap Bakugo. who begins to struggle. Unfortunately for him, it will take more than a few explosions to break free. Throwing his scarf up, he throws Bakugo and plunges him headfirst into the concrete. He repeats this move twice more, then turns and throws Bakugo out of the ring. Bakugo is out of bounds. Shinsu Hitoshi is the winner, Midnight announces. Repeating his theatrics, Hitoshi spins in place and bows to the announcing booth. He ignores Bakugo and leaves the arena. If he tries to help, the blonde will only get even angrier. The fact that he didn't try to attack again shows that he accepted defeat with dignity. To Hitoshi's surprise, as soon as he leaves the arena, he finds Aizawa standing in front of his waiting room. Hitoshi opens his mouth to question, but as soon as he sees Aizawa's worried expression, he closes it. Ingenium just called. Aizawa explains, Izuku is in surgery. It's like someone has thrown a bucket of cold water on him. Hitoshi stays silent for a few seconds without knowing what to say. Finally, he nods and continues toward the waiting room. I'm going to change, he says. If you leave now, you'll have to withdraw from the festival. Aizawa says, I only told you because it wouldn't be fair to leave you in the dark about this. It doesn't matter. Hitoshi replies, even if I stay, I won't be able to concentrate on the next fight. Aizawa nods and lets Hitoshi pass. 10 minutes later, the two are in the car with Aizawa driving at full speed and probably breaking a few dozen traffic laws. Fortunately, the whole of Japan is watching the sports festival, either live or from home, which means the streets are practically empty. Hazashi looks at the message he received from Netsu and frowns. Shouta and Shinsu left without telling anyone. Shouta is not one to do that. For him to leave like that, it can only mean that he has an emergency, and the only kind of emergency that can make Shouta lose his composure like that is when it's related to his son. Hazashi can only sigh and hope that the little listener is okay. Meanwhile, he goes back to announcing. Okay, listeners, now for the next matchups we have. In normal circumstances, Bakugo would step in Hitoshi's place, but he refused to continue after losing. As hot-headed as he is, no one can say he's not honorable. Shinsu Hitoshi had a family emergency and will be withdrawing from the festival because of this. Izashi explains. Therefore, Takoyami Fumikage wins the match by woe. Now, moving on with the matches. Kaminari Denki vs Ashido Mina. Denki was worried since he heard that Shinsu was withdrawing from the festival. Mike Sensei said it was because of a family emergency. Shinsu rarely talks about his family. Denki only knows what he heard at a glance. Shinsu lives with a hero and his son, and he never said who the hero was, only that he is underground. Strangely, Aizawa didn't comment at all during the Shinsu and Bakugo fight, and it seems that he hasn't come back yet. Could it be that he went to escort Shinsu? But why would their teacher do that? Denki shakes his head to bring himself back to the moment. Mina has arrived in the arena and is not an easy enemy. For this fight, Denki chooses not to use the charge blade. Mina is too fast, and the weapon is heavy. Using it here would be a bad idea. 3, 2, 1, start. Midnight cracks the whip. Mina goes up surfing on acid to increase her speed. Denki dives to the side to avoid a kick that would hit him right in the face and responds with a kick that Mina dodges easily. She continues to use the acid to skate across the ring. Before long, the floor is full of acid. Unfortunately for her, she has forgotten one small detail. Acid is conductive. Rubbing his hands together and concentrating his electricity, Denki shoots lightning at the ground and lights everything up. The electricity quickly hits Mina as she skates, causing her to lose her balance and slip out of the ring. Ashido is out of bounds. Kaminari Denki is the winner. Midnight announces. Kaminari Denki vs Takoyami Fumikage. The last fight of the festival was somewhat anticlimactic. Unfortunately for Takoyami, Denki countered him in every way possible. His electricity generates enough light to knock out Dark Shadow, and if Takoyami tries to attack him head-on, he will be electrocuted. In the end, the duo tries but loses. Frankly, Denki needs to double-check the brackets a few times because he can't believe he won. He, Kaminari Denki, has just won UAS Sports Festival. The awarding of medals occurs smoothly. All Might makes a dramatic entrance and hands out the medals, starting with third place. Since Shinsu is absent, he will have to pick up his medal later. Having withdrawn or not, he is tied with Mina for third place. In second place, Takoyami receives the medal, and Dark Shadow celebrates excitedly. And in first place, Denki still can't believe he won. But receiving the gold medal leaves no room for doubt. After the award ceremony, in closing, the whole class goes home in high spirits. The atmosphere in the car is tense. Hitoshi and Aizawa have not exchanged a word during the entire trip. Not that it was long. The trip to Hasu that would usually take about an hour and a half with traffic, was done in half an hour. That's how much Aizawa was in a hurry. The hospital parking lot was practically full, the only parking space being a tight squeeze between two cars, but not even this made Aizawa slow down. Instead, he applied the parking brake while the car was in motion, causing the car to drift and stop exactly between the two cars. If Hitoshi hadn't been so worried, he would probably have been impressed with this parallel parking worthy of an action movie. Having parked, Aizawa practically jumps out of the car and runs into the hospital, with Hitoshi scurrying not to be left behind. When he enters, Aizawa is already at the reception desk with his hair floating as he talks to the receptionist, who seems on the verge of a panic attack. Without much to do, Hitoshi sits down and begins the waiting game. 2 hours. 2 fucking hours. That is how long Shouta had to wait for news about Izuku. No one informed him anything other than he is still in surgery and we will let you know as soon as he is out. Shouta knows that his reaction is illogical. He knows how hospitals work. He has been in them more times than he would like to admit. But no matter how illogical he is being, all logic disappears when it comes to his child. Hell, after the USJ, the only reason Shouta was calm when Izuku woke up was that he was high on tranquilizers and analgesics. By now, Shouta must have walked a few miles, pacing in circles in front of the reception desk. Shinsu is sitting close enough to hear any updates but far enough away to be ignored by most. He seems on the verge of hypnotizing Shouta to try and calm him down, which would be pretty hypocritical of the insomniac who hasn't stopped tapping his foot for a second since they arrived. Aizawa, with the speed in which Shouta ran to the nurse who called him, anyone would think he had a speed quirk. The nurse, apparently much more experienced than the receptionist, didn't even bat an eye. Aizawa Izuku is in the hero wing. Follow me. Shouta didn't need to look to know that Shinsu was right behind him. On the way, the nurse asked, "Would you like a summary of his wounds now?" "Yes, please." Shouta nodded. The nurse hummed, picking up a clipboard and starting to read without stopping walking. His only wound came from a horizontal cut on his belly, made by a sharp weapon. According to Ingenium, it was a katana. The cut was deep, but fortunately his costume is well done. If not for her, the cut could have been even worse. The nurse explained, "Fortunately, we have no shortage of type O blood here, so we were able to transfuse it quickly. But he needed emergency surgery. The katana cut right through his stomach, but thanks to several quirks that I won't waste my time or yours explaining, we were able to reconstruct the organs in time. All in all, he was lucky. The heroes were nearby and brought him here immediately. If it had taken 10 minutes longer, his condition would have been much worse. He is expected to recover soon and the only thing he will carry with him is a scar." Hearing this, Shouta allowed himself a sigh of relief. "Izuku is fine. Thank you." Shouta nodded again. "Don't mention it." The nurse smiled at him, then showed him the right door. He will need to spend the night under observation, but if his condition does not worsen, he should be able to go home. Just remember to keep the wound clean and bandaged and monitor for possible infection. It is recommended to wait at least a week before trying any kind of quirk to speed up the recovery. Other than that, just make sure that he rests and avoids any kind of strenuous activity. He doesn't want his stitches to open. His stomach has basically been rebuilt. He will probably have little appetite for the next few weeks. It is important that he eats light meals. He may have a fever. Izuku doesn't get fevers. It is impossible because of his quirk. Shouta commented, "What we have to keep an eye on is something else. And I figure you know what to do." The nurse replied, "It has happened a few times in the past." Shouta nodded. "It's rare, but it happened. Okay, you can go in. When he wakes up, just call me." Having said that, she left. Shouta took a deep breath and opened the door. Upon entering, he immediately saw the bed where Izuku was lying, still unconscious and dressed in a hospital gown. This sight immediately brought Shouta back to memories of the first time he had seen Izuku like this, just after the incident with Hisashi. Since that time, this has happened only a few times. Incredibly, Izuku is good at keeping himself safe. Or rather, Zuku is good at keeping Kuzu safe, and Kuzu is good at keeping Zuku safe. But as rare as it has happened a few times. Hero work is dangerous, and sometimes it is impossible not to get hurt. Still, it never gets easier for Shouta to see Izuku unconscious in a hospital bed. That hyperactive kid shouldn't be so still. Shouta silently approaches the bed and just watches for a few seconds as Izuku's chest slowly rises and falls. Izuku was a little paler than usual. Placing a hand on his forehead, Shouta noticed that his skin was cold. His skin is always at an above-average temperature. That is one reason cats love him so much. But Shouta had expected this. Izuku's organism behaves a little differently than other people. Technically, his normal body temperature is what most would consider a high fever. His fevers are different. Instead of his body temperature rising, it falls. Izuku doesn't get fevers. He gets hypothermias. Meanwhile, Shinsu silently dragged 2 chairs to the edge of the bed and sat down on one of them. He hasn't said anything since they left the sports festival, and it doesn't look like he will say anything for the moment. He just silently watched Izuku. Shouta waved his hands in front of him to get his attention. "It's okay," Shouta signed as soon as Shinsu looked at him. "He's okay." Shinsu nodded and looked again at Izuku. He started to sign without looking back at Shouta. "I know. He sighed. Logically, I know he's fine, but you're still worried, Shouta said aloud this time. Shinsu nodded again. I'm the same. Shinsu turned his face back to him so quickly that Shouta feared he would have whiplash. Nobody knows better than me how capable he is, but that will never stop me from worrying about him. Worrying is a dad's job. I will always worry about all of you, just as I know that he will never stop worrying about us. Shinsu kept silent for a few seconds, then his eyes widened as what Shouta said finally registered. He hesitantly raises his hands again. All of you, he signed tentatively, then looked back to Izuku. Us? Yes, problem child too. Shouta smirked. Do you think I won't worry about my son? Or that he won't worry about his brother? You mean it? Shinsu finally speaks, as tears gather in his eyes. I never say things I don't mean, unless it's a logical ruse. Shouta smirks then looks Shinsu in the eyes. Of course, if this is what you want. Yes. Shouta puts his arm around Shinsu's shoulder and pulls him into a side hug. I would say welcome to the family, but we already considered you family from day one. Shouta said, we are just making it official now, Shinsu. Then call me Hitoshi. Shinsu Hitoshi replied. If you are going to be my dad, it makes sense to use my first name. As you wish, Hitoshi. This time, Kuzu and Zuku wake up at almost the same time. Just a few seconds of difference. Right away, they notice something. They are trembling. Kuzu tries to move, but their arms and legs are numb. And although they have just woken up, they feel oddly drowsy. Cold Kuzu slurred. Wow, his voice is slow, and the whole room went silent. Suddenly Kuzu realized that there was someone talking right next to the bed. He looked over and saw Dad and Toshi. Hi. If asked in a few days, Kuzu will totally blame the painkillers. He is usually much more eloquent than that. If I wasn't afraid of busting your stitches, I'd be crushing you in a hug right now, Toshi said, approaching carefully and wrapping his arms around Izuku. Hugs are more of a Zuku thing, but that doesn't mean Kuzu will turn a free one down. He may not go out of his way to ask for hugs, but that doesn't mean he doesn't like them either. And at that moment, honestly, a hug sounds incredibly nice. Izuku practically melts in the hug. Warm. Was Hitoshi always this warm? No, I'm not. You are cold. What? Kuzu wasn't mumbling. Was he? I think it was me. Zuku slurred. But I'm too tired to care right now. Toshi giggled as he pulled away from the hug. And Izuku immediately missed the warmth. Before they could think much about the cold, they felt a weight on their heads, and something white appeared in front of their eyes. When Izuku looked up, they saw their dad putting his scarf on him. Izuku smiled as they buried their face in the scarf. Then Zuku suddenly remembered something and quickly turned to his dad. Ingenium, he said quickly. Is he okay? Tensei is fine, Shouta assured. His armor protected him from the worst of the attacks. He had only scratches. That's good. Zuku sighed in relief. I'm so glad he's fine. We can discuss what happened later, Shouta said, when you are not so tired. The nurse said that you can be discharged tomorrow morning. Toshi explained, as long as there are no complications tonight. Great, Kuzu replied. I hate hospitals. I know, problem child. Shouta replied, ruffling his hair. Go back to sleep. And isn't that a tempting offer? Izuku certainly feels tired. Nodding, Izuku lies back down, and in a few seconds, he falls asleep. The night passed without any incident or complication, and once Shouta was sure that Izuku would not wake up, he quickly returned home to get some things for Izuku, including Izuku's favorite comfort hoodie that he's sure his son would want. The next day, as soon as possible, Shouta heads off to sign Izuku's discharge while Hitoshi helps him get ready. He then goes to Izuku's room. Upon entering the room, Shouta has to hold back his laughter when he sees how Izuku is dressed. One would think that the boy is getting ready to travel to Alaska. He was dressed in a winter coat, heavy gloves, a scarf, and a cap, and he was wearing 2 pairs of socks. Shaking his head, Shouta goes to him and crouches down, showing his back. What? Izuku asked. You're not walking like this, problem children. Shouta replied. It is either that, or a Princess Carrie. Your choice. Izuku grumbles but climbs onto Shouta's back. But Shouta knows that they are just being dramatic. If there is one thing that Izuku loves, it is piggyback riding. And this is easily proven when Izuku practically melts on Shouta's back as soon as he is comfortable. Shouta calmly takes Izuku and puts him in the car, and then drives home. As he arrives and gets out of the car, he notices Hitoshi staring at him as if he has suddenly grown a second head. Is something wrong, Hitoshi? Shouta asked, raising an eyebrow as he went to open the back seat door. Something wrong? Something wrong, he asks. Hitoshi says, flailing his arms. You knew how to drive like a normal person all along. Then why do you always drive like a maniac? I have no idea what you are talking about. Shouta snorted. Dad is a sadist if you still haven't noticed, Toshi. Izuku said. I don't know why I expected an answer. Hitoshi said, shaking his head. Let's go, Shouta said. Ape. Izuku yelped as Shouta pulled him up and put him in a Princess Carrie. Shouta carried Izuku into the apartment, with Hitoshi following close behind, laughing all the while at the expression of betrayal on Izuku's face. Upon entering, Shouta immediately places Izuku on the couch and goes to the kitchen to start preparing some tea. He wants Izuku to rest, so no coffee, while Hitoshi keeps Izuku company. When he returns to the room with the tea, the same tea that Nezu always presents him with, and he almost never uses, he finds one of the cutest scenes he has ever seen. Izuku is on the couch curled up like a burrito in a blanket, with Pablo nuzzling his face while Hitoshi laughs at him. Shouta juggled the tray in one arm and, with the other, grabbed his phone to take a picture. Unfortunately, this time he forgot to turn off the sound, which meant that Izuku saw it and turned to him, pouting. Shouta laughed and took another picture of his expression. "Dad, you traitor," Kuzu said dramatically. And meanwhile, Hitoshi just laughed at the whole situation. A few minutes later, Hitoshi helped Izuku untangle himself from the blanket enough to free his hands and hold the teacup. Watching the scene, it was as if all the worry that Shouta had been feeling disappeared. Izuku will be fine. Shouta just needs to be here to help him recover. As for the hero killer, he better hope he never crosses paths with Shouta. Nobody messes with his family. After a short break, it was time to go back to school. As Hitoshi walks to the classroom, Izuku is right behind him, literally behind, his arms around his chest and his face pressed into Hitoshi's neck as they walk. The last few days have been interesting, to say the least. Hitoshi knew from day one how touchy-feely Izuku was, but these last few days, he has taken it to a new level, to the point that Hitoshi is considering changing his nickname from Bunny to Koala. Izuku came to school today, 70% out of stubbornness and 30% out of Shouta not wanting to leave him alone while he is sick. At least at UA, if something happens, Recovery Girl is around. They can also take a nap in the teacher's lounge afterwards. This is the safest place to be right now. Despite arriving an hour early, they surprisingly were not the first to arrive. This post goes to Ida, who was already at his desk. As soon as he saw Hitoshi and Izuku, Ida stood up and practically ran towards them, stopping in front of Hitoshi and bowing at 90 degrees. "Sensei, thank you." Hitoshi blinked, and he could see that Izuku wasn't any less confused. "Why are you thanking me, Ida-kun?" Izuku asked, looking from above Hitoshi's shoulder. "My brother told us what happened," Ida explained. "If it weren't for you, my brother would be seriously injured and maybe even dead. You saved his life and his career." Izuku looked at Hitoshi for a second and then let go of him, walking to Ida. "Raise your head, Ida-kun," Izuku said gently. As soon as Ida lifted his head, Izuku hugged him. "I didn't do what I did to be thanked. I did it because it was right. And I am glad that Ingenium is okay. He is one of my favorite heroes." "I still thank you," Ida replied. "I don't know what I would do if I had lost him." "Then it's good you don't need to know," Kuzu said, pulling out from the hug. "You're welcome, Ida. I wish you a good recovery, Sensei." Ida said. "I'll be fine," Izuku said, smirking at Hitoshi. "My family is making sure that I rest." Ida nodded and went back to his seat. After that, Izuku went back to hanging on Hitoshi. Hitoshi has to admit that seeing the confused expressions on his classmates was hilarious. Until Todoroki came in. Izuku immediately raised their head like a predator who had just located his prey and jumped on Todoroki, hanging on his left side with their head resting on his shoulder. "Huh, Izuku," Todoroki said in confusion. "Warm," Izuku said, snuggling closer. Hitoshi feels a slight pang of jealousy at this action, but the feeling fades quickly when he sees Izuku's happy face, and seconds later, he's laughing with the rest of the class. Shouta stops in front of the door to the classroom 1 minute before the class starts. As usual, he intends to enter exactly on time. Not a minute early, not a minute late. This time, however, he has one more student accompanying him. A student who will certainly be a headache. Why did he agree to Vlad's idea anyway? The day after the sports festival, shortly after he had taken Izuku home, Shouta was at school for a meeting with the staff. The same one that takes place every year, where they go over the internship offers the students have received. The purpose of the meeting is simply to filter the offers to ensure that no student goes with any hero who ends up hurting them, be it for prejudice or lack of ethics. The school has rarely had to veto any offer, but even so, it is a safety issue. Right after the meeting, Shouta wanted nothing more than to go home, but he was interrupted by StallKing, who wanted to discuss something with him. "Aizawa, your class has only 19 students, right?" Vlad asked him. "Technically," Aizawa replied. "Himeko is the 20th student, but since she is part of the rehabilitation program, she is not an official student." "Why?" "Well, you see, Shouta was not in the mood for dilly-dally." "Spit it out, Vlad. I want you to take one of my students," Vlad said. Shouta blinked and stared at Vlad for a few seconds before sighing. "Who and why?" Shouta asked calmly. "Because he knows the other teacher well. Vlad is not the type to give up on a student." "Monomanito," Vlad replied. Shouta's years of training as an underground hero is the only thing that makes him able to keep his poker face. At the beginning of the year, Shouta wanted Monoma in his class, but Vlad insisted on having him in 1B. Since Shouta had already gotten Xiaoji and Jiru, the other two Vlad wanted, he gave in on this one. I know. You were right. Vlad sighed. Monoma has potential, much more than he realizes, but I am not the teacher who will be able to help him reach that potential, Aizawa. You are. Despite the friendship, rivalry relationship between the two teachers and them constantly acting like they hate each other, everyone knows they have the same priority. Still, Monoma is a delicate case. As I said, unofficially, Himiko is the 20th student. If you want to transfer him into my class, you'll have to take one of mine. Shouta explained. I have an idea who it might be, but I'll have to talk to him. You talk to Monoma. If they both accept, I am sure that Nedzu already has the paperwork ready. Thank you, Aizawa. Vlad said. Don't mention it. Shouta waved him off. Just promise to take good care of my kid and I will do the same with yours. Deal. Apparently, Vlad had no serious problems getting Monoma to agree to the transfer. But at the same time, Monoma doesn't seem exactly happy with the decision. The way he walks behind Shouta with his head down while keeping his spine straight says a lot. Frankly, why does Shouta always end up with the problem children? I'll enter and announce you, Shouta said about 10 seconds before the bell. You can enter when I call. All right, Monoma replied with a fake smirk. Shouta sighs. One more for therapy. As soon as the bell rings, he opens the door and enters dramatically. Maybe he should add a cape to his costume. For dramatic effect, to Shouta's satisfaction. Everyone falls silent as soon as the door opens. He scans the entire room and holds back his laughter when he sees Izuku sharing a chair with Todoroki hanging on his left arm. As expected, a cold Izuku becomes a heat-seeking missile. Before we begin, I have an announcement to make. Shouta started. As you can see, Aoyama is not in the room. No, he has not been expelled. Many students sigh in relief. Aoyama was transferred to Class 1B. The decision was accepted by all involved. In his place, please welcome your new classmate. On cue, Monoma opens the door and steps in. Half of the class gasps seeing him. As you can see, I decided to grace your class with my superiority. No need to thank me, Monoma said. I think most of you already know him, but this is Monoma Nito. Get along well, Shouta said. Monoma, go sit down. Monoma nodded and went to his desk. The class reaction was mixed. Most were indifference and curiosity. Some smiled at their new colleague. Two of them glared at him until he sat down. Something to discuss later. And, of course, to the surprise of 0 people, Izuku gave his million-watt smile and waved at him. With that out of the way, Shouta begins discussing the internships and showing the offers. Todoroki, Kaminari, and Takoyami received thousands of offers. Hitoshi did not receive as many, but that was to be expected considering his quirk and the fact that he had withdrawn from the competition. Bakugo and Ashido also received a good number of offers. The others received far less, and some 0. After explaining about the standard list of offers for those who haven't received any, Shouta announces the next step. You have until the end of the week to fill out the form and give it to me. Choose well. Many first years end up regretting their choice for the internship. Shouta said, now it is time to make one of the most important decisions of your career. He smirked. Hero names. The class cheered, but Shouta quickly silenced them with a quirked glare. Don't take it lightly, Izuku said, kinda sleepy. Your hero name can be changed later, but the first name usually ends up being the one you will be known by forever. He's right, Shouta said. I'm no good at that, so I'll have someone else help the class. He ignores his brat's giggles. Choose your name wisely or else you'll have hell to pay later, Midnight said, barging into the room. You don't want to end up with something like Eraserhead, do you? And at that, Izuku full-on laughs. Shouta should never have told him his hero name's origin story. As a name, you will probably want something simple to remember and that suits you. You can also use a pun or something to mislead your opponent. Izuku explained. Actually, you never told me, Hitoshi said. How did you choose your name? We didn't. Izuku shrugged. As everyone knows, it was never a secret. We became a hero through a vigilante rehabilitation program created by director Nedzu. The Project Vigilante. Hitoshi nodded. In our time as vigilantes, we rarely said anything to the criminals we arrested. We alternated our patrols. One day Zuku, the next Kuzu. This is the main reason why they thought we were 2 people. But we never gave anyone a name to call us. But you do have a name, Ashido said. Poltergeist and Ifrit. About a year after we started. We were in the middle of a patrol when we first heard this name. Apparently, because of the way Zuku attacked criminals by surprise with whatever objects were around, they started calling him the Poltergeist. Kuzu explained. My case was funnier. They called me Ifrit because they said I looked like a demon. Although we never chose those names, once people started using them they never stopped. The same will happen to you, so be wise, Zuku said. And if you want help, we are right here. Shouta nods and gets into his sleeping bag. Don't wake me up unless someone is dying. Shouta says and closes his eyes. The class doesn't even bat an eye, too used to his antics by now. He needs new tricks. Izuku was about to fall asleep again when he felt a gentle nudge on his shoulder. He looks up and sees Todoroki with a troubled expression on his face. Hey, Todoroki, need help? Kuzu asks. I'm not sure. Todoroki starts. What name I should choose? What do you have in mind? Kuzu asks. I was thinking of going with my name. Todoroki replies. But, yeah, no, bad idea. Kuzu says. I will always advocate keeping your civilian and hero identity as separate as possible. Use her name as your hero's name and soon you won't know which one is you. Then, what should I do? Todoroki asked. There's many names you could choose. Zuko chirps in. Think of something that has to do with you personally or quirk-wise. Like I don't know, Frost Flame. Your naming sense sucks, Zuko. Kuzu laughs. I'm not the one who named our cat bastard, am I? Zuko replied. No, that was Dad. Kuzu replied. You are the one who called our present Mike plushie Mini Mike. Zuko gasps. We don't talk about Mini Mike. I think I know what name I'll choose. Todoroki said. Thank you, Kuzu. Thank you, Zuko. No problem, Todoroki. They say together. Call me Shouto. Todoroki said after a few seconds of silence. No problem, Shouto. They say again. Due to a lack of volunteers, they go by seat order. The first was the newcomer, Monomanito, who got Aoyama's place on the first chair. Phantom Thief, he proudly announces, and Midnight quickly approves. Ashido's alien queen is denied, so she goes with Pinky. Sue chooses Froppy as her name. Ida chooses Turbo. Uraraka decided to be Uravity. Ajiro went by Tailman. Kaminari chooses Chargeabolt. Kirishima goes by Red Riot. Kuda chooses Anima. Satu chooses Sugarman. Shaoji goes by Tentacle. Jiru chooses Earphone Jack. Siro chooses Cellophane. Takoyami chooses Tsukayomi. Shouto goes next, and his choice is Freeze Burn. Not the most creative, but who are they to judge? Hagakure goes simply by Invisible Girl. Kachin is denied from being Lord Explosion Murder and King Explosion Murder before settling on being Ground Zero. Good choice. Then Toshi goes next, and Izuku gives him their full attention. Toshi has been incredibly secretive about his name choice. The Symbiosis hero, Talkdown. This name completely fits him. Toshi gives them a shy look as he says it, and Izuku replies with a big smile. Next, Yamomo chooses Creati, and the last one is Himiko, who animatedly skips to the front of the class. The actress hero, impersonation. With the names chosen, all that remains is to choose with whom they will do their internships. Hitoshi groaned as he began to look through the stack of offerings on his desk. He didn't receive nearly as many as Kaminari and Todoroki, but he still had over 500 offers to choose from. The offerings were well organized. First, the name of the hero who sent the offer, then the agency's name, and then the city they operate in. The list being organized alphabetically also helps. He first took a quick look over the names and separated the ones that caught his eye from those he obviously wouldn't want to go. Most of the names he doesn't recognize. Hitoshi is not a hero nerd like Izuku, but he considers himself to be at least knowledgeable in the field, which means they must be undergrounds. Not knowing what kind of hero most of them are makes it difficult to make a decision now, so Hitoshi opens his notebook and starts writing down the names that catch his eye. Hitoshi froze for a few seconds when he saw one of the names and discreetly lifted his head to look at Izuku. Manuel operates in Hasu, the same city where Izuku encountered and was wounded by the hero killer. Hitoshi frowns and writes the name as one of his options. What Hitoshi doesn't notice is the worried look that Izuku gives him. Hitoshi jumps up when he hears someone knocking on his door suddenly. He was so focused on his notebook that he was not paying attention to his surroundings. Dad would get on his case about his situational awareness. But being fair, he should be allowed to let his guard down inside his room. Come in, Hitoshi calls out while hiding the notebook under his pillow. The door opens slowly, and Izuku enters with a shy smile on his face. Hi, Toshi, can we talk for a moment? Zuko asks. Sure, Hitoshi replies, and Zuko comes closer, pulling the desk chair closer to the bed, and sits down, crossing his legs on it. So, have you decided who you're going to intern under? Zuko asks. I'm not sure yet. There's so many options here, Hitoshi says, staring at the stack of papers on his desk. Zuko pulls the first sheet of paper into his hand and begins to read. I take it that you don't know most of these names. Hitoshi nods. Most are undergrounds, as you probably assumed, but I don't think many of these are good matches to you. Can I? Zuko says, pointing to the marker on the table. Hitoshi nods again. May I see the ones you have already considered? The ones in that notebook that you're not trying to hide under your pillow. Damn heroes and their hawk eyes, Hitoshi grumbles, picking up the notebook and passing it to Zuko, who opens it and starts to read. Ms. Joke is a good one. She loves to get on Dad's nerves, but they are good friends and she's a great hero. Zuko comments, Password could be great too, especially if you want to learn more about infiltration and lock picking. He is one of the few that Dad respects who don't work with him at UA. especially if you want to learn more about infiltration and lock picking. Then we have. Zuko stops and frowns for a second before schooling his expression and looking at Hitoshi. Why, Manuel, your quirks are not similar in the slightest, and he's not an underground hero. He's a good hero, but I doubt he can teach you anything. Well, damn it, how does he explain that? I thought he could teach me to. Then Hitoshi feels a flicker on his forehead. Toshi, stop, please, Zuko says in a sad tone. Don't go that path, it's not worth it. And Hitoshi has just been read as a book. Looks like he's not as good at hiding his feelings as he thought he was. Or maybe it is just Izuku who is too observant. But you almost. Hitoshi tries to formulate a sentence to explain how he feels, but he can't. So he just lowers his head. Toshi, look at me. Hitoshi leans his head up and meets a pair of blue eyes filled with understanding and sympathy. Do you remember, Hisashi? Hitoshi remembers. It happened a couple of weeks ago when they received a letter from Tartarus sent by Izuku's biological father, Midoriya Hisashi. Hitoshi had never seen Izuku so upset. That week, Izuku explained to him that Hisashi was a serial killer and the one who killed Izuku's mother. I remember, Hitoshi noted. You went to Tartarus a few weeks ago to visit him. What we didn't tell you is that we were the ones who caught him, Zuko replied. It was right before Dad adopted us. What happened? Hitoshi asked. Not sure where Izuku was going with this. Hisashi is the reason we became vigilantes in the first place. Kuzu entered the conversation. We had different reasons, but the same objective. Different reasons? Hitoshi asked. As you know, I can't feel anger. Sometimes it sucks, Zuko said. There are many things that I feel should make me angry, but I simply can't. Then Zuko laughed. Like, the man who killed my mom. I can't even get angry at him. I, on the other hand, feel enough anger for both of us, Kuzu continued. The difference between us was quite simple. Zuko always wanted justice. I wanted revenge. We trained for a whole year before we started. Dad spent 3 years trying to win our trust, Zuko explained, and we decided to trust him. We broke into Hisashi's house. We mapped out the whole house, photographed everything that could be used as evidence against him, and gave it to Dad. Dad made us promise we would let it for the heroes, and we promised. But the bastard had an escape route planned. A secret tunnel under the house. Hitoshi could see a glow on Kuzu's throat as he got more worked up with the tale. We didn't know about the tunnel, and he almost escaped because of that. So we followed him. We found him. We fought him, Zuko said. And what happened? Hitoshi asked. We won, they said together. Then they showed Hitoshi their scarred right hand. That was the price, Kuzu explained. Then he lowered his head. If Dad hadn't stopped us, we would have killed him. The only reason Netsu-sen was able to put us on his program despite how much the commission hated us was that we never killed anyone. Zuko continued. If we had killed him, it doesn't matter who he was. We would be in Tartarus in the cell where he is now. And let me tell you something, Toshi, Kuzu said. Beating him like that didn't help at all. It didn't erase all the abuse we suffered at his hands. It didn't take away the scars and burns that we still have because of him. Zuko said. It has not lessened the anger I feel toward him. Kuzu continued. And it certainly didn't bring Mom back. Zuko finished, then looked up at Hitoshi again and smiled. So please, Toshi, don't go down this path. It won't help. Then, Hitoshi looked at them. What do I do with this anger? He hurt you. I can't just forgive him. Anger will not just go away. Kuzu noted. But you can learn to work with it. There's nothing wrong with feeling anger. Just don't let your anger control you. Zuko smiled. And if you need help, that's what family is for, isn't it? Kuzu finished. Okay, Hitoshi said, picking the notebook from Izuku's hand. Then he picked a pen and scratched Manuel's name from the notebook. I promise I won't go after Stain. Great, Zuko grinned. Now, back to your internship. I'll mark the ones I think could benefit you the most. Though, I have a feeling I know who you're going to intern under. He started to mark a few names on each page with a yellow marker. On one page, he used a red marker on a single name before returning to the yellow one. If you have questions about any of these heroes, you can ask Dad or us. Dad, Hitoshi asked. Dad ignores most of the new Limelight heroes, but there isn't an underground he doesn't know about. He says it's because he likes to know who he might run into during his patrols. Kuzu explained, and it kinda makes sense. If it's someone he doesn't know, it's probably a vigilante. Dad is not opposed to working with them, but he likes to know. Okay, Hitoshi says. Thanks for the help, Bunny. Anytime, Toshi. Zuko grins and gets up from the chair, leaving the stack of papers on the desk and putting the chair back in the right place. Hitoshi picks up the stack and starts reading the names that Izuku has marked. He has narrowed the list down to about 15 choices which Hitoshi quickly marks in the notebook. However, when he gets to the name marked in red, he wonders how the hell he didn't see that one before. Eraserhead, Loud Cloud Agency, Musutafu. And well, now that he is thinking logically again, never will Hitoshi miss the chance to intern under his favorite hero. After all, there is only one other hero he could consider choosing over Eraserhead, and they are in the next room. Sensei, is he really a good choice? Tamura asks the monitor on the wall right after Kirigiri teleports the hero killer back to Hasu. Our interests conflict. He worships All Might. We are trying to kill him. Shigaraki Tamura is not stupid. Short-tempered, yes. Childish, maybe. Stupid, no. He has influence. An influence that you can take advantage of, Tamura. A deep voice replies from the monitor. Despite the way he acts, Tamura is intelligent and strategic. In the online world, he is one of the best players in any strategy game. That's why he knows that having the hero killer in the league is a mistake. No matter what Sensei says. I understand, Sensei. No, he doesn't. The hero killer won't help them. The way he attacked Tamura and Kirigiri minutes ago is enough proof of that. Tamura looks at the bar counter where Kirigiri was robotically cleaning a glass. All the glasses are already clean, but he still keeps cleaning them. This is a great opportunity, Tamura. The monitor replies, don't disappoint me. Then the monitor turns off and a red light appears. A great opportunity, my ass, Tamura shouts, slamming his hands on a table that immediately disintegrates. Unlike what most people think, Tamura is usually calm. But there is something in him that generates uncontrollable anger, an urge to destroy that won't go away until he acts on it. Kirigiri continues to clean the glasses, not batting an eye on the decayed table. A few minutes, and tables later, the red light on the monitor vanishes, and Tamura's anger starts to dim. I can't feel him anymore, Tamura says. It's safe for now. As soon as he says this, Kirigiri puts the glass on the counter and sighs. How do you feel, Tamura? Kirigiri asks. Like a puppet. Tamura replies. The hero killer. There is no way Sensei thinks this could work. Tamura is smart. He knows when he's being manipulated. This fury he feels is not natural. It always comes after talking to Sensei. And it's always accompanied by a feeling of being watched. Damn the day that child decided to follow the first stranger who showed him kindness. What will we do? Kirigiri asks, and despite his monotone voice, Tamura notices the concern in his tone. The only good thing that came out of it was meeting Kirigiri. At first, the Mistman acted like an NPC, only responding when spoken to, always repeating the same meaningless actions. His only duty was to be Tamura's caretaker. But that began to change about a year ago. Kirigiri slowly began to show a personality of his own. The first time he confided in Tamura was when he admitted to hearing a voice in his head, as if there was someone else with him. Tamura found this strange and decided to investigate. With Kirigiri's help, he entered the laboratory of the doctor who is always with Sensei, and there he found the files on Kirigiri. This is how he discovered that Kirigiri was a Namo. With this discovery, Kirigiri tried to communicate with the voice in his head. He discovered that the voice belonged to the person who was used to create him. Whether he's alive or is just a vestige of his former personality is a mystery, but they decided that it would be better to hide this from Sensei. Who knows what he will do to Kirigiri if he finds out. Tamura cannot lose him. Kirigiri is the only one who really cares, but it is only a matter of time before Sensei suspects something. Tamura might be a villain, but even he has things he wants to protect. Kirigiri, we played Sensei's game for far too long. Tamura says, it's time to steal the joystick. We need to play carefully. Kirigiri replies, and we'll need allies. I have someone in mind. Tamura smirks, but first I need you to keep an eye on the hero killer. He's too unhinged. We can't let him join the league. If my plan works, we make sure that Stain stays out of the picture and we get a chance to talk to our possible ally. As you wish, young Master Tamura. Kirigiri bows and then leave in a mist portal. I said to cut the young master crap. Tamura mumbles, smiling. What? A bore. Izuku screamed at the empty apartment. It was only the first day of internships, and Izuku was already dying of boredom. The worst of his wounds had already healed. However, Granny Chiyo said he had to wait at least 4 more days before he could be cleared for patrols again. The result is that while everyone is in the internships, training, and learning, Izuku is stuck alone in the apartment with nothing to do. Gam Stendhol. If it weren't for him, we could be training Shadow right now. That was the original plan. Right after the sports festival, regardless of how he did, Izuku was going to send Shadow an internship offer. Although fire quirks are pretty common, finding a hero with a fire quirk that is not part of Endeavor's agency is almost impossible. With the scandal of Endeavor's arrest, the heroes of Endeavor's agency had to rush to scrape together the rest of the trust they had left so that the agency would not close. With so much work ahead of them, internship offers were the last thing on their minds. Unfortunately, Izuku's forced medical leave also meant no heroes available with a similar quirk to Shadow's to intern under. In the end, he accepted Present Mike's offer, which was a great idea. Not only is Mike already mentoring Dabai, but he also has a lot of experience with difficult-to-control quirks. As an analyst, he is second only to Netsu, although Izuku is fast approaching his level. Alas, boredom. Who knew that being alone at home could be so dull? There are only so many fights in the news for them to analyze before they lose the fun. and in the last week, when they couldn't patrol, they advanced the whole lesson plan until the final exams. If they don't find something to do soon, they will end up making homemade bombs in the kitchen. Dad won't be happy if he comes back and finds the house on fire again. It happened once, one too many times. Izuku. Salvation comes in the form of a ping on their phone. Looking at the message, it is from Majima. Majima-sen finished repairing our costume. Zuku cheers, and he said he added the piece we asked for. Great. Kuzu replies. Let's check it out. All right, Pablo. Zuku calls the cat. We're going out for a while. Take care of the house, and don't let the bastard break anything, okay? Pablo nods and meows in affirmation, and Izuku takes a moment to scratch behind the cat's ear before leaving towards UA. Hitoshi has lost count of how many times he has kissed the mat since he started training. Now he is used to it. Training with Izuku and Shouta, who love to do judo throws, means he's constantly being thrown to the ground. But at the moment, he's constantly being thrown to the ground by Eraserhead while another Eraserhead watches. Fighting with Himiko is an interesting experience. The girl can be more chaotic than all the Izuku combined, but seeing her using her quirk is fascinating. Himiko is a fantastic actress. Hitoshi caught a glimpse of her abilities that time in the hospital, and he really believed she was the detective. But now, he is seeing everything firsthand. In transforming into Eraserhead, she has managed to perfectly emulate the tired hero's mannerisms, from the tone of his voice, the way he walks, and even his fighting style. The only thing she can't do is use the capture scarf with the same mastery. But Eraserhead has already said that it took him 6 years to master the weapon. That's enough, Eraserhead says after Hitoshi kisses the floor again. Then Himiko Aizawa grins and morphs back to her original form. The biggest problem with Himiko's quirk is that she must be naked to transform. Otherwise, the clothes of the person she has transformed will appear on top of hers. But this problem was solved in a very interesting way. Her hero costume is quite simple. It appears to be a simple girl's school uniform, similar to the one she was wearing the first time she and Dabai arrived at UA. But with some new technology, once Himiko begins to transform, her clothes dematerialize and are stored in a small device that she carries like a necklace, courtesy of I-Island. This technology is not yet available globally, and as she untransforms, the clothes return to her body. She skips over to Hitoshi and offers him a hand to get up. Hitoshi sighs but accepts the hand, standing up and panting. That was a bit better, Dad says amusedly. The sadist. For now, go take a nap. I'll bring you somewhere tonight. It's important, so make sure to get some rest. Okay. Hitoshi salutes and goes to take a shower. Then he goes straight to bed. Whatever Dad has planned, if he says it's important, it's because it is important. A few hours later, around 10 in the evening, Hitoshi and Himiko, dressed in their costumes, followed Shouta down a deserted street paying full attention to the hero. Hitoshi much more than Himiko. All right, Shouta raises a hand. And they stop. Then he looks Hitoshi dead in the eyes. The place where I am taking you is an area I usually only talk about with third years. But if you want to be an underground or even a Twilight hero, you must know about it. Hitoshi nods. Oh, we are here. Himiko jumps, pointing to a building ahead. I love this place. Hitoshi looks and finds a cafe. Hanging on the front is a black flag with a white painted peace sign waving in the wind. Shouta notices him looking at the flag and nods. You might have seen these flags in a few buildings before. They indicate neutral areas. Shouta explains. Before we go in, a few rules. He raises a finger. First, no names or relationships while we are here. I am Eraserhead. You are Talkdown, and she is impersonation, don't forget. Then he raises another finger. Second, no matter who you might see there, don't try anything. I'll explain the rest inside. Understood. Hitoshi nods again. Shouta nods approvingly and gestures to them to follow him. He opens the door and enters. The place was empty except for a customer or two in the corners. Shouta went straight to the counter and greeted the attendant, a man apparently over 50, with a large scar from his forehead to his nose. He was pale with black eyes and black hair. As soon as he saw Shouta and Himiko, he smiled and waved. Eraser, Draculina. It's been a long time. He greeted. Scarface. Eraserhead noted. Hi, Scar-chan. Oh, and it's impersonation now. Himiko waved excitedly. The man, Scarface, apparently, narrowed his eyes and looked between Himiko and Shouta a few times. Then he grinned and nodded at Himiko. So, you've finally accepted? He asked. Yup, me and Dabai. We are gonna be heroes. Himiko replied animatedly. Good, you're gonna be one of the good ones. Scarface said. I'll miss my best informants, though. Then he looked at Hitoshi. And who's that? This is Talkdown, my intern for the week. Shouta explained. I'm showing him the ropes. All right. Scarface ducks under the counter. Grade, 3rd grade. Shouta replies. And I'll have the usual. Same for him. The usual for me too. Himiko chimed in. All right. You can use table 7. Scarface replied. I'll be there soon. Then he disappeared to where Hitoshi assumed it was the kitchen. Hitoshi followed Aizawa to one of the corners of the cafe, where there was a table with a number 7 above it. They sat down, and Shouta immediately began to talk. As I said outside, this place is a neutral area. Do you have any idea of what this means? Hitoshi does have one, and judging from what Shouta said outside, he's probably right. This place serves villains too, right? Hitoshi asks. Villains, heroes, civilians, vigilantes, informants, morally gray. Shouta says, as long as you don't break the rules, you're welcome here. They'll serve you, no questions asked. This is a cafe, but there are other places, like bars, clubs, and clinics. Scarface is one of the nicest people we've met. Himiko says, don't let his face fool you, he's a softie. Glad to know you still like me. Hitoshi almost jumps in surprise when he hears the voice behind him. Damn it, he usually has better situational awareness than that. 2 coffees, black like a racer's soul. Himiko giggles as Scarface puts a cup in front of each one. And 1 Bloody Mary for the lovely lady. Wait, isn't Bloody Mary an alcoholic drink? Hitoshi asks. Not this one, Scarface replies, but it is actual blood. Himiko sips the red drink and smiles. Perfect as always, Scar-chan. Good to know. Scarface smiles and then looks at Eraserhead. This one is in the house. Consider it a gift to the newbie. Then he leaves muttering. And Eraser never brings his wallet, anyway. Scarface is a retired sandman. One of the best I have ever crossed paths with. Shouta explains. Anyway, he waves him off, then takes a sip from his coffee. Damn, I missed this coffee. As I said, as long as you follow the rules, you are welcome here. And for an underground hero, these places are essential. When we were informants, Dabai and I mostly met people here. Himiko explained. Remember how he asked for a grade? Eraser said it was 3rd grade. Hitoshi replied. That is the degree of confidentiality of the conversation. We have 4 grades, Eraser explained. 4th degree means we won't be discussing anything serious. Anyone can hear us without any problem. In these cases, he'll just let us sit whenever we want to. Then we have 3rd degree. Himiko continued. It means we won't be discussing any secrets. Like, just now we are just explaining to you how this place works. It's no problem if anyone hears us. But we still would like some privacy, so he guided us to an area where there's no one. 2nd degree means we'll be discussing business. Shouta adds, confidential or not, Scarface will make sure no one can overhear us. Then he sighs. 1st degree is the rarest to be needed. The ones who usually uses it are the Yakuza and the like. Basically, he'll set a separate room for your meeting, and uses 1,000 other security measures to make sure it's safe. Not even him will know what you discussed. And of course, the higher the degree, the more expensive it will be. Himiko said, 3rd and 4th degree are for free, but 2nd and 1st are quite expensive. And I'm not talking about money. Not money, Hitoshi asks. Then what? Something to know about the underground, kid. Shouta says, transactions made with cash are actually quite rare. The only kind of deal that is always made with money is drugs. Money is the least valuable thing here. And what do they deal with? Hitoshi asks. Mostly 2 things. Shouta raises 2 fingers. Information and favors. Remember how Eraser-chan said to not use names? Himiko asked. That's because the informants who frequent here only need one name to find out everything about you and your family. Eraser-chan's name is probably one of the most valuable secrets in the underground. Last I checked, Jurin was offering 7 favors to anyone who could find out. Dual-chan's is worth 5. In the right hands, 5 favors from Jurin could raise a new crime lord. At that moment, the bell rang, indicating that someone was coming in. And when Hitoshi looked up, only Shouta's scarf quickly holding him back prevented him from getting up from his chair. Because the person who just entered was the hero killer himself, Stain. Don't, Shouta said firmly. No matter what, talk down, personal vendettas must stay outside. Hitoshi snapped his head back to Shouta, intending to yell at him. How can he be calm when the person who hurt his son is standing right in front of them? But then he saw his dad's expression. His teeth clenched as he held the cup so tightly that it was about to break. Beside him, Himiko also barely contained her fury. But none of them did anything as Stain discussed something with Scarface, took a key, and then went up the stairs to the 2nd floor. When Stain was out of sight, Shouta sighed. Believe me, I want to go after him right now, Shouta said. But neutral areas have rules, and they must be followed. What happens if you break then? Hitoshi asked. It depends on the person in charge. Scarface has a very simple policy. Breaking his rules results in banishment. Shouta sighed again. But most of them have many favors cashed with powerful people. In the past, countless heroes, villains, and vigilantes have been assassinated for thinking they were above the rules. Yeah, Himiko nodded. I witnessed it once. It was in a neutral clinic. One of the vigilantes tried to attack a villain who was being treated. Himiko shivered. What they did to him was not pleasant to witness by any means. But after that, no one ever tried to break the rules again, even at the risk of just being banned. This place is the best source of information you can find. For an underground hero, losing something like this is suicide. Shouta finished. Then he downed the rest of his coffee. I think this is enough for today. Let's go back to the agency. All right. Itoshi nodded and followed Shouta, glancing once more at the stairs Stain had just climbed. Heroics are much more gray than I thought. There is a saying that underground heroes are just vigilantes with paychecks. Shouta replied. This is one of the reasons. It is a little earlier than I wanted you to see. But it is important that you understand. The underground is like a community. We have our own rules. Villains are accepted here. But those who have goals, whether you approve of them or not, killers who kill for the sake of killing are not well regarded. Himiko pointed back to the cafe. A few months ago, a villain was banned from all neutral areas in Japan at the same time. He killed only for the pleasure of killing. He tortured a couple of heroes live on TV for hours before killing them. This kind of person is the one we despise the most. Hitoshi nodded as they went back to the agency. When they arrived, Hitoshi went straight to bed. But it took him a while to get to sleep. He had a lot on his mind. Upon returning home, with his new outfit in hand, Izuku was surprised to find Pablo on the table staring at a letter on top of a package. The only way it could have gotten here is if someone had entered, but the door had no sign of being opened, and if someone had entered, the cameras would have caught it and reported it. This building may not look like much, but many heroes live here. Security is second only to that of UA. Izuku carefully took the letter and looked at it. There was no sender, but it was addressed to Izuku. The only thing written on the envelope was not an enemy. Taking a deep breath and ignoring the package for now, Izuku opened the letter. Inside the envelope was a simple letter, handwritten on a notebook sheet. The handwriting was messy, as if the person who wrote it was in a hurry, and at the same time had trouble holding the pen. The message itself was simple, a phone number and a short message. I have information that I think you will be interested in. Inside the package there is something for us to communicate with. Don't try to call, I won't answer. Signed, a potential ally. Having read the letter, they turn to the package. While Kuzu carefully opens the package, Zuko opens a window and prepares to throw the package if necessary. Kuzu's sigh of relief says it's unnecessary, so Zuko focuses on the package as well. Inside the package was a simple telephone of no recognizable brand, the kind of untraceable model that a few people in the underground use. The interesting thing is that there's only 2 informants who know how to get one of those, Dabai and Jurin. And with Dabai out of the underground, that means this phone came from Jurin, and he doesn't do business with just anyone. Whoever this potential ally is, they have good contacts. Turning on his phone, Izuku quickly checks the applications. The only thing installed was an encrypted chat app, and it had some unread messages. Opening it, the sender of the messages was marked as, really, not even an alias. Sighing, Izuku opened the messages. As I said in the letter, don't even waste your time trying to call this number. The first information I have is about Stain. He is still in Hasu, and will attack in 2 days. His target is Ingenium, since he is the only one who has escaped from him. The League of Villains is involved. They will create a distraction for the attack, but Stain is not yet a member. The result of this attack will decide whether he joins the League or not. Expect to have to deal with at least a few nomas. About the League, I also have a list. They are trying to recruit more people, but unlike the USJ, this time they want quality instead of quantity. These are the ones they are on lookout for. Attached to the next message was a picture of a list of names. Sensei said that we will have a quest in a few months, so he wants me to find possible party members. At the moment, these are the most plausible members. Stain, civilian name unknown. He's too unhinged and idolizes All Might. Our ideals clash, but Sensei insists on recruiting him. Hikishi Kenji, Magni and Sako Atsuhiro, Mr. Compress. They work practically together. If I can recruit one, the other won't be difficult. Yubegawara Jin, twice. He thinks he is just a clone created by his quirk. Recruiting him can be difficult, but with the right words, it's possible. Higuchi Shuichi, not a villain yet. He openly demonstrates his support for Stain. If the alliance with the hero killer works, it will be easy to recruit him. Toga Himiko, no alias, and Dabai, civilian name unknown. These 2 have joined a reform program, so it is unlikely that they will accept to join the League. This is all I have at the moment. That's a lot more than Izuku had. 40 to 40. Just who are you? Izuku wasn't expecting a response, so when he saw a texting bubble, he was surprised. Someone involved with the wrong people and wanting out. But I can't just leave. They have someone I want to save. 40 to 40. I take it you're with them then. This complicates things a little. But if your information is true, we can help you. I am counting on it. Sensei is too powerful. Alone maybe I could escape, but 40 to 40. Let's start small. I'll contact you in about 3 days. Great. 40 to 40. By the way, how did you find my house? And how did you enter without being killed? Your cat is a menace, but we were faster so he couldn't kill me. Still, my messenger has a pretty bad headache now. As for discovering your address, you don't need to know this yet. 40 to 40. How mysterious. The other person didn't reply anymore. Great, now Izuku has a mysterious contact inside the League of Villains. This will be a headache, and they can't deal with it alone. Looking at the clock, Izuku saw that it was not yet 6 o'clock. By now Dad will have finished his training, but he must be sleeping to get ready for patrol. Calling him is not an option, and frankly, Izuku doesn't want to distract him from his week of internships. Itoshi needs this experience. But they have another contact who will be delighted to hear about this new development, a deity in rat form. The second day of internships went just as well as the first. Itoshi spent the day kissing the floor. Only this time, instead of fighting an Aizawa, Himiko, he fought a shorter Aizawa, Himiko. And well, if Himiko copied Eraserhead's fighting style well, she copied Izuku's even better. Just ask his ribs. They will definitely bruise. At night, Hitoshi had his first patrol. He basically practiced Parker for most of the night, but he's getting better. Who knows, maybe soon he will be able to do the Spider-Man maneuvers that he has seen Eraserhead do with his scarf. But hey, he got the chance to arrest a mugger, and without a scratch too. Something suspicious though is how silent Izuku has been. They text every night asking how the training went and what they did on the day. However, knowing Izuku, it's very strange for them not to spend hours on a tangent about everything that happened during the day. When Izuku is quiet, they are usually up to something. They should rest for at least another week. And Hitoshi really hopes that they aren't planning an early return. He probably should bring his worries to Dad, but he probably already knows, right? He has been taking care of Izuku for so long. It should be fine. Interning with Eraser-chan has been the most fun Himiko has had in years. She never thought it would be possible to become a hero, but Izu-chan never gave up on her or on Dabai. Accepting his offer was the best thing she ever did. It has been weeks since she became ward of UA, and they have never let her starve. Maybe she should find it strange how much blood they have access to. But being a hero school, accidents probably happen often, and she can't be the first person with this kind of need to go there. It must be normal. But anyway, training with Eraser-chan has been amazing. Hito-chan is so much fun to talk to, and he fights so well. In ordinary situations, Himiko would probably have serious trouble against him. But Izu-chan and Eraser-chan are on another level. While she pushes them around, Hito-chan doesn't stand much of a chance. This is actually a very recent development. After Himiko stopped starving, her quirk went through an evolution. She had always had a natural ease in acting like the person she transforms into. But after evolution, she discovered that this also applied to other skills. It's nothing magical. To impersonate someone, she needs to know the person well and how they act. But it can be said that Himiko is a genius at acting, and she can mimic the basic aspects of the person's fighting style almost perfectly. For example, while transformed into Eraser-chan, she fights exactly like him. But she doesn't have enough training to use the scarf. That part she can't just mimic. Same with Izu-chan's chains, especially since her quirk can't copy Izu-chan's telekinesis. But anyway, she is learning much more than she ever thought possible. And all her classmates have accepted her. They are so much nicer than the kids at her old school. The teachers too, Magi-chan and Nezi-chan, are helping her with analysis, and they say she's good at it. And to think that she was on the verge of becoming a villain. Where would she be today if the boy she attacked that night had not been Zu-chan? Would she have killed someone? Frankly, she is afraid of the answer. But now is not the time to think about that. Now is the time to get back to training. Tonight they will go out on patrol, and there is a lot she can teach Hito-chan. If she's going to be a hero, she's going to be the best hero possible. Training with Present Mike is so different from training with Endeavor. To begin with, the only thing Endeavor was trying to teach him was how to make his flames more powerful. But since the internships began, the only thing Mike has taught Shadow and Taoya is how to control them. In his words, your flames are already super hot. Half of that power is enough for 90% of the villains you will encounter in your career. What you have to learn now is how to use the right power for each situation. His methods are actually quite similar to Izuku's, if not a little less specialized. Definitely much better than those of the flaming trash can. Izuku's comment about Endeavor acting like a caveman makes more sense every day. The training is effective, this he cannot deny. Taoya never thought it would be possible to use his quirk without getting hurt. Well, he also never thought that one day he would be Taoya again. But here we are. He has spent years on the streets running from his past, creating his persona as Dabai the informant, and trying to gather enough dirt to bring down his sperm donor. It all went downhill the day a green-haired boy came into his life. Maybe it was because he is Shadow's age. Maybe he reminded Taoya of himself. Whatever the reason, Taoya soon became attached to that child. And a few months later he showed up with another child following him, a blonde girl. When Izuku explained her situation, Dabai agreed to take care of her for a while. She never left. And now, years later, here he is. Endeavor is in jail. His family is safe. And Taoya is training to become a hero, no longer for his father's approval, but of his own free will. He has come back from the dead. and he doesn't intend to waste this second chance. He won't be dabbed by the informant and vigilante anymore. Now he will be the reborn hero, Phoenix. Interning with Hawks is, well, it's an experience. His and Fumicage's personalities could not be more different. But well, the same can be said for Dark Shadow, and they make a good team. Even with his eccentricities, the experience that Hawks possesses is the real deal. And unlike All Might, Hawks know how to pass on this experience in the form of lessons. Fumicage is definitely learning new tricks, and he is much more in tune with his quirk. Interesting. If someone had asked Fumicage in the past to describe his relationship with Dark Shadow, he would have said that they are partners, and on the best days, friends. But since he began training with Izuku and came to understand Dark Shadow better well, if someone were to ask that question nowadays, Fumicage's answer would be that they are brothers. It is so freeing not to have to be afraid of the dark anymore. When Izuku suggested this hero for Denki's internship, he only hesitated for a second before accepting. Then, as he researched this hero, he became a little more hesitant. Lightning Rod is a hero he had never heard of, and apparently this hero is not even in the top 500. He's part of a small agency that Denki never heard of. Why would Izuku suggest someone like this to him? But despite his reservations, Denki decided to go with him. Izuku hasn't given him a single bad suggestion yet, so it's worth trusting him. Upon meeting the hero, Denki soon understood why. Lightning Rod was a tall middle-aged man with red hair and eyes and a constant expression of boredom. His quirk is actually quite similar to Denki's. However, he does not generate his own electricity. He needs to absorb it and store it in his body. Also, he is a walking lightning rod. Any kind of electrical discharge is attracted directly to him. Despite his low rankings, Lightning Rod is an extremely efficient hero. His success rate on takedowns is over 95%, and he boasts an amazing 99% in rescue rate. Frankly, Denki is surprised that he is so low in the hero rankings. When he questioned why, the answer was, "The school I graduated from pushed all students to limelight, but I wanted to be underground. I only went to that school because it was closest to home. If I had tried UA, I would have had to take the train every day. It would have been a pain in the ass. Although I am limelight, I keep out of the media. My debut was catching a pickpocket. When I catch a villain, I make sure to stay out of the cameras, and I always work with other heroes who get the spotlight." In short, on paper Lightning Rod is a limelight hero, but in practice he acts like an underground. The only people who know him are those who work with him. At this stage, Denki is learning different ways to apply his quirk with his support gear. Lightning Rod was very impressed with the creativity behind the charge blade that Denki used at the sports festival, and how well Denki was able to use such a complex weapon. Lightning Rod first taught Denki how to use the wire gun, a simple weapon in the form of a bracelet that fires a copper wire. When fired, the wire attaches itself to the target, which creates a bridge to release his electricity, an alternative for medium to long-range combat should the need arise. Plus, the wire avoids wasting energy, meaning Denki can lower his output and still keep the desired results. Despite his initial reservations, Denki definitely does not regret choosing Lightning Rod as his mentor. It's today. Everything is ready, and Stain is already in place. Tamura and Kirigiri watch the city from the top of Hasu's tallest building. The plan is simple. Tamura will cause the distraction with his Nomus, and Stain will use the opportunity to quietly kill his target. Tamura frowns at the thought of the hero killer. He talks so much about real heroes, but is willing to use chaos and possibly dozens of innocent lives just to kill one of the so-called fake heroes. Hypocrite. What has Ingenium even done to be considered a fake hero? As soon as the hour comes, Kirigiri opens a portal, and 4 Nomus come out of it. "You have your orders," Tamura says to the Nomus. "Obey it." And the Nomus goes into the city. Tamura pulls a phone from his pocket, being careful not to touch it with his 5 fingers, and opens the chat app. It has begun. A few seconds later, the reply comes. "Duality, and we are ready for it." Tamura grins and pockets the phone. As soon as he hears the sound of fighting, he turns to Kirigiri. "They are here. Get ready to leave as soon as I say. The portal is ready. I just need to open it." Kirigiri replies. "Now, you just have to catch Stain, Duality." Tamura says, "Don't mess this up." Izuku watches Hasu from the top of a building. 4 Nomus have been released in the city. They seem weaker than the one at USJ, but still, underestimating them is a mistake. Of course, Nedzu knows this. After discussing the possible informant with Nedzu, it was decided that UA teachers would be summoned to assist in Hasu's attack. Thus, Present Mike and Eraserhead are in town at this time with their interns. Also, Snipe is on top of one of the buildings for support, and 13 is with their team to handle the rescues. Should Izuku be here too? Of course not. After taking the information to the principal, he told Izuku to return to rest and said they would take care of the case. Did Izuku decide to completely ignore the order? Heck yes, they did. In their defense, if they wanted them not to get involved, they should have made them promise not to get involved. Izuku never breaks their promises, but if they didn't promise anything, fair game. Just to make sure that everything is right, Izuku sends his cameras in 2 directions. The first following Eraserhead, and the second following Present Mike. And it's at this moment that he notices something strange in the Nomus behavior. They're causing property damage all over the city, but not a single person is hurt. They see a Namu heading towards a group of civilians, but they completely ignore them in favor of destroying the store they were standing near. One of the Nomus even punches away a stand that was about to fall before returning to destroy everything. Something smells fishy here, Kuzu mutters. We can think about it later. Zuko replied. Any sign of Stain? It doesn't look like Toshi's group will find him. Kuzu said. They are too focused on helping with the evacuation since they aren't really suited to fight the Namu. Shit. What? Zuko asked, alarmed. A flying Namu. It separated Himiko from the rest of the group. Kuzu explained. Well, she's not one of the best for nothing. Zuko said. She knows to be careful. Then he sucked a breath. And Shadow is separated too. We should keep an eye on him. All right, let's move. Kuzu said. We need to find Ingenium too. He knows he's Stain's target, so he must be carrying his tracker. Zuko replied. If he didn't lose it again. Kuzu muttered. Stop jinxing, and let's go. Zuko scolded as he jumped from the building and started flying. Why, even when they are on forced medical leave, do the problem children somehow remain at the center of the problems? Somehow, Izuku has been contacted by someone from within the League of Villains who wants to change sides. And the first information they pass on is about an attack on Hasu that is meant to be a distraction while the hero killer finds and kills his target. Shouta, accompanied by Himiko and Hitoshi, has been put on lookout for any sign of Stain while helping with the evacuation. This is the best thing to do since neither Eraserhead nor his interns are really suited to take on the Nomus. Problem number 1 came in the form of a flying Namu that eventually separated Himiko from the rest of the group. Problem number 2 came from the fact that neither Ingenium nor Tenya is responding to communications. Problem number 3 came in the form of a silhouette in the sky that Shouta would recognize from anywhere. One that certainly shouldn't be here. God damn it. Can't Shouta have just a single week without the problem children living up to their name? Oh, they're so grounded. Shouta mutters. What? Hitoshi asked, looking up. It's nothing. Don't lose focus, talk down. Shouta replied, shaking his head. Let's check the next alley. Then he takes off, Hitoshi stumbling to follow him. Shouta is kinda worried about Himiko, but she's skilled, and he knows it. She should be alright. So how did Himiko end up in this situation? It was supposed to be something simple. Help the civilians evacuate while they keep an eye out for Stain. Well, she found Stain. The problem is that she found Stain about to finish that hero who dresses like a Native American. To make things worse, Ingenium and Tenya are paralyzed on the ground and will probably be the next target. With no time to waste, Himiko takes one of her knives and throws it at the hero killer, but he obviously blocks it. Still, the opening is enough for her to charge in and force him to retreat. Why do so many fakes insist on standing in my way? Stain says angrily. Sorry, Stainy. Himiko says in a cold sweat. I can't let you kill them. Another kid. Stain mumbles. Leave now, and you can keep your life. If I did that, I wouldn't be a hero, would I? Himiko replies. Well said. Then, Stain grins. Show me your determination. With that, Stain charges at her with his katana in hand, and Himiko barely has time to draw her knives and block the attack. Don't let him cut you. She hears Ingenium's warning and takes a step back to avoid the second slash of the blade. Narrowing her eyes, Himiko goes on the offensive, delivering a barrage of slashes and stabs that Stain skillfully blocks, but she gives no rest and continues to attack. You're not half bad, kid, Stain says, but I can't lose here. Then he throws a knife at Tenya, still paralyzed on the floor. Himiko's eyes widen, and she jumps in front of the knife that ends up lodged in her left arm. Stain immediately grabs the knife and pulls it violently. Himiko grits her teeth, refusing to scream despite the pain. You are worth living, Stain says as he brings the knife closer to his mouth. But these fakes will die today. He opens the mouth, but just as he's about to lick the blood on the blade, a fire beam is shot, and he has to dodge again. Another one. How many more will interrupt me? I heard fighting coming from an alley. I came to check thinking it was another Namu. A monotonous voice says, Freeze-chan. Himiko cheers as Todoroki enters the alley. Impersonation. Todoroki nods at her. This looks like a nasty wound. I can still fight. Himiko replies, smiling. But you don't need. Another familiar voice says, we'll take it from here. Himiko looks up and is surprised to see Izu-chan landing right behind them. Duel-chan, she asks, shouldn't you be? You again. Stain's yell interrupts them. You almost died last time. If we fight now, the weakest will be curled. Izu-chan ignores Stain and walks with their eyes closed, stopping in front of Himiko. an expression of concentration on their face. We can talk later, Izu-chan says. You two, get them out of here and call rescue. I'll take care of Stain. Then they open their eyes, and Himiko sees briefly a pair of almost glowing green eyes. These fakes won't escape Ag in just a second. Izu-chan is in front of Stain, grabbing him by the face, covering his mouth, then they fly up, taking Stain with them. You heard them, Todoroki says, looking up the way Izu-chan flew. We need to get them to safety. He looks at her and frowns. We also need to bandage that arm. Himiko looks at her arm and also frowns. It's bleeding more than she thought. Let's go. She gets up with Todoroki's help and applies pressure on her arm. Before she leaves the alley, she takes one more glance in the direction Izu-chan flew. She hopes they're fine. Kuzu is very familiar with the feeling of anger. Izuku flies at high speed, carrying Stain, who, surprised at being grabbed like that, forgets to attack. Izuku doesn't really understand the feeling of anger. They stop on the roof of a building, and Izuku drops Stain. But now, united as they have not been in a long time, Izuku is furious. How dare this man hurt their friends? How dare this man hurt their family? They stop on the roof of a building. Izuku drops Stain and stands facing him. Izuku tried to talk to him, but it didn't work. Stentol is dead. The man in front of them is Stain, the hero killer. Anything I wanted to say to you, I said the last time we met, Izuku says in a sad tone. So let's just get this over with, okay? Stain doesn't reply. Instead, he lunges with all his speed, stopping in front of Izuku and slashing his stomach, exactly like he did last time. But this time, Izuku doesn't even move as the katana hits. And when Stain jumps back, there's no blood on the blade. What? Stain says, looking at his blade. How? The same trick won't work again. Izuku grins and lunges at Stain. Stain barely avoids a kick to the face and tries to cut again, this time hitting the chest, but fails to draw blood again. When he looks at Izuku's severed costume, he notices a metallic sheen. A chainmail. Stain snarls. Izuku simply smiles and throws his cloak at Stain in a swift movement. Stain cuts through the cloak, but when he looks, Izuku is no longer there. Suddenly he feels a kick to the chin that throws him back a few feet. Izuku takes advantage of the momentum and aims another kick at Stain's knees. Stain blocks the kick using his katana, but Izuku lights his leg with his hottest purple flames that melt the blade in seconds. Feeling the heat, Stain drops his katana and jumps back. Izuku quickly puts out the fire before he can burn himself. Stain pulls two knives and throws them at Izuku, who blocks them by breathing a wall of fire that melts the knives. As the flames subside, Izuku looks at Stain and smiles. You will have to try a little better than that, Izuku says as he lunges at Stain again. Stain pulls two other daggers and lunges back at Izuku. With the last Namu subdued, Shouta finally has time to go after Himiko. Fortunately, they had the foresight to activate the trackers on Himiko and Hitoshi's phones. Thus, if the phone is with her, Shouta will find her. Following the tracker, Shouta finds not only Himiko but also Todoroki, Tensei, Tenya, and Native. Todoroki was bandaging Himiko's arm while the other three were on the floor. What happened? Shouta asks as soon as he's in hearing reach. Himiko looks up at him, then looks behind her toward an alleyway. Stain, Himiko says. I found him about to kill them. She points to the three on the floor, so I had to try fighting him. When I arrived, he was about to lick the knife he used to injure her. Todoroki continued. I imagine this is how he activates his quirk. What happened to Stain? Shouta asks, looking around. Izuku arrived. Todoroki replied. He grabbed Stain and dragged him somewhere. Of course he did. Shouta replies, pinching the bridge of his nose. What direction he go? Himiko and Todoroki point south. Then Shouta looks at Hitoshi. Wait here with them. He quickly shoots his scarf up, using it to get to the rooftop, then starts running south. The sound of metal hitting metal echoes through the roof. Izuku repeatedly attacks with his chains as Stain blocks blow after blow. Both Izuku and Stain are panting. Despite his immense skill, Stain is an ambush fighter like Shouta. If the fight goes on too long, he will soon tire. And Izuku is beginning to feel the mental strain of holding the merge for a long period of time. Their mind is already trying to force themselves apart again. Breathing heavily, Izuku stops their attack, leaning on one knee with their hand on their forehead. Not yet, Izuku mumbles. Keep together. Just a little longer. Stain seizes the opening and tries to attack again. But Izuku recovers in time and rolls away from the knife. Immediately, Izuku throws their chains, wrapping them around Stain's two arms, pulling him closer and connecting a punch to his face. It's time to put an end to this, Izuku mutters. Izuku pulls Stain closer again, wrapping their chains around him many times, completely immobilizing his arms. They then throw Stain over their shoulder and slam him into the roof with all their force. They repeat the movement by slamming Stain on the roof again and then spinning and throwing him upwards without letting go of the chains. Izuku flies after him and stops in midair. With Stain still hanging onto his chains, he begins to spin vertically, increasing his speed. Then he breaks free of the air and comes down still spinning, slamming Stain again with the added momentum of the spin. When Izuku returns to the ground, he immediately drops to his knees, and their eyes return to their blue and yellow coloration. Is it over? Zuko asks breathlessly as they watch if Stain will get up. I think as Kuzu was about to reply, Stain started to get up. You won't defeat me, Stain screams. You won't defeat me. No one will defeat me until I finish my mission. He keeps screaming, and Izuku can feel the bloodlust increasing with each word. I must curdle all the fake heroes. The only one who can kill me is the one true hero. Though, before he can finish, someone jumps on him. You talk too much, a familiar tired voice says, but Stain doesn't hear. He's completely unconscious now. What do I do with you, problem children? Dad, Zuko asks, trying to get up, but he stumbles and falls down due to tiredness. I'm here, Izuku, Dad says, grabbing him before he falls and hugging him carefully. It's over and everyone is safe. Thanks, Kuzu mutters as his eyes start to drop. I'm glad. They can feel their dad smiling as he rubs Izuku's back. Oh, and Izuku, Dad mutters. You're grounded. Izuku wakes up in a hospital room again. This isn't about to become a regular thing, right? Sighing, Izuku tries to remember what happened, but the truth is that they don't remember very well. They know what they have done. When they found Himiko and Shoto in that alley, Himiko getting up to keep fighting even though she was wounded, they didn't want to leave any chance. They merged and went in. But after that, the next thing they knew, Stain was rising up with a paralyzing bloodlust, and then their dad stepped in and knocked the hero killer out for good. Frankly, the fact that their memories while merged are kind of blocked is a big inconvenience. But anyway, they can worry about that later, like when they have to give their statement to the police. Damn, this will be a headache. Turning his head, he realizes that there are other beds in the room. Himiko is in the next bed, Ida in the next, and then Ingenium. Izuku is sure that Native was also in the attack, but he is not around. Shoto and Present Mike were also in the room, but no sign of Talia. Izu-chan. Himiko yells as soon as she sees Izuku awaken. You're finally awake. I was so worried. Lower please, Himi-chan. Kuzu replies. We are fine, but we have a migraine. You're lucky it's just a migraine. They heard a gruff voice and looked up to see their dad, and he doesn't look happy. The doctor said that if you had pushed your brain any further you would have had a CVA. Oh, this explained the migraine. Looks like they really pushed their luck this time. Other than that, you managed to get through the fight with only a few bruises. Wait, Ingenium interrupts. You're saying that he fought against Stain and didn't get cut? He looks at Izuku with wide eyes. How? Armor, Kuzu says shrugging. We asked Powerloader to make a chainmail for us. Zuko elaborated. It's light enough to move without problems, and offers protection against Stain's blades. But of course, not being cut doesn't mean that his blows didn't hurt. Tell me about it. Kuzu muttered as he poked at his belly and winced. We can discuss more later. You're not escaping, Izuku, Shouta said glaring at Izuku. But first, there's someone here who want to talk to you guys. As if on cue, the door opened, and an officer with a dog's head entered. Chief Tsuragami. Truth be told, Izuku loves Tsukachi like an uncle, and Tamakawa is not far behind. But apart from those two, Izuku's relationship with the police is neutral at best. Unfortunately, with the exception of a few people, quirkism runs wild in the police force. That people like Tamakawa have managed to reach such a high ranking despite all the discrimination is nothing less than a testament to their efforts. Chief Tsuragami is someone Izuku has never talked to personally. They have no idea what kind of person he is. But it took him half as much effort as Tamakawa to get where he is, then he must take his job seriously. Tsuragami could be a little more to the point. I mean, what is the point of telling them the Vigilante's history? The students will see it in history soon enough. Not to mention that the only real students here are Shoto, Ida, and technically, Himiko. It is when he starts talking about the consequences of vigilantism that Zuko decides to interrupt. Just a moment please, Zuko says. What exactly are you implying? Well, these kids fought Stain, and they don't have a license. Tsuragami replies. What they did was vigilantism. Wrong, Kuzu says. They did nothing wrong. The chief opens his mouth to argue, but Zuko continues talking. Formula was with Ingenium when they were attacked, and he had his mentor's permission to use his quirk. Then he points to Shoto. Same to freeze burn. Present Mike gave explicit permission for him to use his quirk, and he didn't really fight Stain. He points to Himiko. The only one who engaged was impersonation, who didn't use her quirk at all during the fight. But even she also had permission from Eraserhead. Then he points to himself. And finally, the one who fought and defeated Stain were us. He points to his dad, and Eraserhead. And as far as I can tell, we both have a license. So, no vigilantism here. Finishing speaking, Izuku holds the gaze of Chief Tsuragami, and for several seconds neither of them blinks, until the chief looks away, letting out a bark that sounds a lot like laughter. When he looks at Izuku again, his serious expression is completely gone. It's exactly as he said, Tsurugami says, smiling. Since all of you had permission to act, there won't be any repercussions. All that's left is to decide what will be disclosed. Everyone here participated in the capture of the villain. Immediately, Himiko raises her hand. I want to be underground, so please don't say anything about me. And I'm already underground. Dan says, I didn't do anything besides being saved. Ingenium says, and Ida nods along. Me neither, Shouto says right after. All I did was stop him from paralyzing Himiko. I wasn't even there. Uncle Mike chimed in. Izuku blinked at them. Really? Zuko said. All right then. Kuzu sighed. How about you say? Duality defeated the hero killer with the help of an underground hero, another voice said. And when Izuku looked, Hitoshi was at the door with a thermos and a stack of disposable cups. It's the truth, and it doesn't divulge Dad's name. How come no one thought of this? Good enough for me. Kuzu shrugs. That's perfect, Zuko says with much more enthusiasm. Dad, sounds fine, Dad says, then points at the thermos Hitoshi is holding. I really hope this is coffee. Definitely is not tea. Hitoshi replies, smirking as he gives one cup to Dad. Well, if everything is settled, I will let you rest. Chief Tsurugami gets up and bows to Izuku. On behalf of the police department, I thank you for the service you have given the city of Hasu. Then he turns and leaves the room. Well, that's new, Kuzu says a few seconds after the chief leaves. I mean, a few officers had thanked us before, but no one ever bowed to us. Zuko continues, much less someone of his position. Stain has killed or maimed more than 40 heroes already. It's thanks to you that no one else will fall victim to him, Dad said, ruffling their hair. You did good, problem children. I guess we did, huh? Zuko says. We'll never get used to that, will we? Kuzu mutters. I doubt. Zuko snorts. Dad laughs and ruffles their hair again. Go back to sleep, problem children, Dad said, then smirked. We can discuss your punishment later. Izuku opens their mouth to argue, but then they remember that they almost had a stroke because of their recklessness. Okay, that's fair, Kuzu says. I can't really remember the last time we were grounded. Zuko replies. I do. Kuzu smirks. It was after the pink shell ink. Kuzu is interrupted by Zuko slapping their mouth shut while his right cheek reddens. We don't talk about the pink shell incident, Kuzu, he yells in their mind, while Kuzu laughs at him. Sure, Kuzu replied. Zuko holds releases their mouth, and after a few seconds of silence, he sighs in relief. I won't tell anyone how the pin. Kuzu, Zuko screams and shoves a pillow in their head to muffle their voice. Everyone in the room starts to laugh as Zuko tries to fuse with the pillow in embarrassment. Okay, now I'm really curious about this story, Hitoshi says. I tell you later. Kuzu signs since he can't talk right now. It's hilarious. Oh, tease and, Zuko says, with his voice still muffled. Tease Barson. Ultimately, it was decided that Izuku will be under house arrest until he is completely healed. The only place he is allowed to go is to UA since he still has his classes to assist. To make matters worse, Dad has also decided that this time he will heal naturally, so no recovery girl to speed things up. It will be at least a week before all the bruises are gone. A long, tedious week. Tamura hasn't been happy like this for years. The plan worked even better than expected. The heroes responded quickly to the Nomus, and with that the attack was resolved without much damage. Of course, Tamura ordered the Nomus not to attack civilians, only the properties and other heroes, but still, the damage was almost minimal. And to make things better, that hypocritical idiot hero killer has been caught and will rot in Tartarus for everything he did. But of course, the world can't let him be happy for long. Tamura suddenly feels a wave of irritation wash over him. He knows what is coming, so he casts a quick glance at Kurogiri, who nods and takes his position, beginning to act robotically, washing glasses that are already clean. A few seconds later, the monitor lights up, and Sensei's voice resounds through the room. Tamura, Sensei greets. Looks like the hero killer won't be joining us, after all. He doesn't sound angry, but Sensei never shows his emotions in his voice, so it is impossible to tell. We'll have to find replacements. I already have some possible party members, Tamura said. Then he showed his list. I've also been looking into them, Sensei replied. They are good choices, but I know you can do better. For instance, there are 2 good choices for you. He snaps his fingers, and the printer, which Tamura is sure has been broken for weeks, prints 1 sheet of paper. Tamura picks the sheet and has to hold himself from frowning when he sees the names on it. Of course, Sensei, Tamura says. You always know the best choices. Then he puts the sheet on the counter. I'll be talking to Jurin tomorrow. If everything goes right, we'll be ready to attack at their summer camp. I'm sure you won't disappoint me, Tamura, Sensei says in a gentle, fake tone, and the monitor blacks out. Tamura waits for a few minutes until the irritation passes. Then he grabs the sheet and decays it. Good choices, Tamura screams. They are just murders. They have no restraint. We'll have to bust one of them out of a mental institution. Tamura, Kurogiri called. Who did he suggest? Moonfish and Muscular. This won't end well, Tamura replied, face-palming. As long as we let Muscular kill people, he should be easy to deal. He sighed. The problem is that we can't let him kill anyone. Will we have to start phase 2 sooner than planned? Kurogiri said. No, not yet. Tamura shook his head. For now, let's proceed as planned. Did you locate the first one already? I have his location. We can go as soon as you're ready, Kurogiri replied. Then let's go now. I doubt Sensei will try to contact us again so soon, Tamura replied. As you wish. Kurogiri nodded and opened a portal. Monday brought with it the end of the internships, and with that the entire class 1 was back. The students excitedly discussed what they had done and learned during the internships, and also gossiped about their mentors. Well, after living with a hero for a week, you inevitably discover certain peculiarities about him. For example, apparently hawks have a habit of entering through his agency window, but the problem is that, just like birds, he can't perceive glass very well, according to Takoyami. He has knocked on the glass window 17 times during the week. Shoto, as usual, doesn't share many words, but his tiny smile says everything Izuku needs to know. At the opposite end of the spectrum, Kaminari is sharing every last detail of his internship. But if we're talking about interesting events, Kaminari looks at Shoto with sparkling eyes. You were in Hasu, right? I didn't do much. Shoto replies. Taoya and Yamada-sensei handled most of the nomes. I just helped with the evacuation. And Izu-sensei was the one who defeated Stain. Kaminari adds, with the help of an under. He shifts his gaze to Hitoshi. Ground hero, was it Aizawa-sensei? Were you in Toga there too? NDAS, Hitoshi says, making a zipping motion in his mouth. Can't say anything. Oh, come on. I want to hear. Stain is so intimidating, but in a way, he's kinda cool. Kaminari. Hitoshi glares at him. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean like that. Kaminari tries to defend. It's okay. Izuku cuts. We understand where you are coming from. We will be the first to say that we admired Stendhal. His determination and goal could be called admirable. Kuzu sighs, but he resorted to murder to achieve these goals. And even worse, he killed innocent people. Zuko continued. Well, we will always admire Vigilante Stendhal. But Stain was a villain and needed to be stopped. Something to always remember. The line between a hero and a villain is thinner than you think. Kuzu says, be careful not to cross it. Because once you cross it, coming back will be almost impossible, Zuko completes. This serious talk lowers the mood of the class, who spend the rest of the time until the beginning of the class thinking about Izuku's words. When Shouta enters, the class is completely silent. From there the class runs normally, and Shouta announces the midterm exams, which leaves at least half the class panicking. Even more so when he announces that anyone who doesn't pass won't go to summer camp. Classes run normally, with a lesson back in heroics class where the students have their big chance to show off what they have learned in the internships. Incidentally, this lesson, in the form of a race, works much better than the battle trials of the first class. It's clear that All Might is taking his duty as a teacher much more seriously. In the weeks leading up to the midterm exams, the class enters a new routine of study and training. For the students who are having trouble academically, study sessions are held, led by Momo, Ida, and surprisingly, Katsuki. The usual groups also train together. Izuku doesn't stop with the weekly training sessions with his personal students. They have all made great progress this week, and Izuku makes sure they know it. Just because Shouta doesn't like to hand out compliments doesn't mean that Izuku will do the same. The written exams were scary to say the least. Hitoshi is confident that he did well. The various study sessions he attended ensured this. Unfortunately, this same confidence seems to be lacking among some students in the class. More specifically, the members of the self-proclaimed Baka Squad, not including their leader. But after the theoretical exams come the practical ones. If Hitoshi got a nickel for every time a classmate asked him if he knew what the practical exam will be, he could retire. He has no idea what the practical exams will be, and it's not because he doesn't try. Unfortunately, Shouta didn't say anything, and as much as Izuku is a terrible liar, lying by omission is apparently another story. What do they bring them to one of the fake cities? Seriously, where does this school get so much money from? Of UA for the practical exam. The rumor going around the school is that the exam will be fighting robots. But Hitoshi doesn't believe this for a single second. Yes, for Hitoshi, fighting robots would be torture, but for most students it would be too easy. Taking into consideration the villains who turned the school into a target, the fact that the school principal is Nedzu, and that Izuku is directly involved in the plans. No, definitely not robots. Seeing Nedzu jumping out of Shouta's scarf was enough to almost give the class a heart attack. Hitoshi personally found it hilarious, but he didn't dare laugh. Welcome to the midterm practical exams. The rat, mouse, bear, dog thing cheered. Does anyone have any idea what the test will be? Robots. Kaminari and Ashido cheered together. You are right, that is the test we usually have for the first years. But this year will be different, Nedzu replied, and Kaminari and Ashido froze in mid-air in their cheering poses. In view of recent bad guy attacks, we have decided to change the exams as a way to ensure that you are prepared for what you are about to face. Then he gestures to Shouta, who sighs. Dramatic rat. Wow, Dad, that's kinda hypocritical, don't you think? For the practical exams, you'll form pairs and fight against a teacher. The pairs and who you will fight have already been decided. Against a teacher. But then we have no chance, Ashido exclaimed, probably remembering what happened in the first heroics lesson. If Zuko defeated 3 of them without even using his quirk, what chance do they have? But they are much better than they were that day. They have all trained hard for this. To make things fair, all teachers will wear this. Shouta showed a pair of wrist weights. They are half our weight and will serve as a handicap to us. All teachers will use it. As for the matchups, they will be Kirishima and Satu versus Cementos, Asui and Takoyami versus Ectoplasm, Ida and Ajiro versus Power Loader, Gei Arazu and Todoroki versus Eraserhead, Uraraka and Toga versus 13, Kaminari and Ashido versus Nedzu, Jiru and Kuda versus Present Mike, Hagakure and Shaoji versus Snipe, Siro and Bakugu versus Midnight, and last, Shinsu and Monoma versus. With the teachers left here, you only have 2 possibilities. And frankly, Hitoshi is rooting for it to be against All Might. But when he looks at his brother's smirk, his hope is already gone. Ifrit. Wait, Ifrit. Monoma asks. Not duality. Nope. Kuzu replies. Poltergeist will be sitting this one out. It will be just you and me. My condolences, Shouta mutters. But Hitoshi hears, to his own horror. Moving on. Wait, what do you mean my condolences? Hitoshi asks. I said no such thing. Shouta replied, hiding his face on his scarf. But Hitoshi has spent enough time with him to know that this means he's laughing. Moving on. The tests will be done semi-consecutively. The first pair will enter, the second will start 10 minutes later, and so on. While waiting for your turn, you can watch the other tests in the observation room. 10 minutes later, everyone was in the observation room waiting for the first fight to start. The students were either with their pair planning or waiting for the first test to get a sense of the kind of terrain they will have to deal with. Or in Kaminari's case, annoying Hitoshi. Bro, I can't believe you got the easiest test. Kaminari whined. Nedzu is terrifying. I have no idea how I'll survive this. The easiest test. Hitoshi raised an eyebrow. I'm fighting Ifrit, you know. Yup, as I said, the easiest. Kaminari replied, grinning. Imagine if it was Poltergeist. He's so scary. Hitoshi could try to reason with him. But Kaminari's test is the 6th while Hitoshi's is the last. Regardless of how long he takes, he will probably be back in time to watch his test. He will see how terrifying, for completely different reasons, Kuzu is. Moreover, if he thinks that Nedzu's student won't know that he said this, he is completely mistaken. If you say so. Hitoshi simply shrugs. Looking around, Hitoshi finds Monoma and approaches him. Truth be told, Hitoshi and Monoma don't see eye to eye. From the first time he saw them meet when Monoma came to tease the class before the sports festival, Hitoshi has kept the same opinion. Monoma is an asshole. After the sports festival, where Hitoshi beat Monoma, they hardly spoke to each other, but every time they interacted, it ended in a fight. Taking a deep breath, Hitoshi approaches. Monoma, we need to. Oh, look who decided to grace me with his sweet presence. Monoma interrupts him. Have you finally realized that you can't achieve anything without the help of the superior student? Hitoshi feels his left eye twitch. Why of all people did he have to be put right up with him? What sin had he committed in his past life to deserve such punishment? Lord, please give me patience, because if you give me strength, I'll need bail money too. Hitoshi mutters to himself, then takes another deep breath. Look, man, I don't like you, and you don't like me. But like it or not, we're going to have to work together. Because I can tell you one thing for sure. Kuzu will show us no mercy. Monoma glares at him, but Hitoshi holds his stare, refusing to be the first to look away. After about 20 seconds, Monoma scoffs and looks away. Fine, Monoma replies. Since you live with the guy, you must know something. Does he have any weaknesses? The only weaknesses I can think of are 2 things that are out of our reach. Hitoshi explains. And even if they were within our reach, to mess with them would be to sign an audit certificate. You're referring to, first, their hoard. Hitoshi replies. Basically, everything they keep is stored in their room. No one can go in there without his permission. This is actually a weakness of both of them. Izuku is possessive like a dragon with their things. And the second one, Monoma asks, Asia, Zuko. Hitoshi replies. They are completely codependent on each other. Right, as interesting as the information is. Monoma replies, waving a hand. It will not help us here. Don't you have anything else? You literally live with him. Let me think, Hitoshi says. Then he snaps his fingers. Though, I know one. Kuzu's main way of locating is through sound. His vision is not the best. His flames are quite bright. Because of this, his eyes are most of the time adjusted to withstand this brightness. Then we can try to sneak by him. Monoma replies, if you can be quiet. His eyesight may not be the best, but his hearing is great. Hitoshi says, what about your quirk? Monoma asks, response-based. If he doesn't answer me, I can't activate. And he knows our quirks well. Hitoshi replies, great, so we are going for this test practically quirkless. Monoma grumbles, I guess I can try to copy his quirk. For that, you will have to touch him, and he covers himself from head to toe. The only uncovered area is his fingers. Hitoshi explains, it'll be hard, but not impossible. Anything else? A word of advice, don't try to fight him head on. Hitoshi warns, even disregarding his flames, which are even hotter than Endeavor's, he ties with Eraserhead in quirkless fighting. Okay, in that case, I have a plan, Monoma says, smirking. Hitoshi has a bad feeling, but frankly, Monoma's plan must be better than the nothing Hitoshi has, right? It didn't take long for the fights to start. Some were very quick, while others took all the time available, but everyone watching was paying full attention. Kirishima and Sato versus Cementos. Kirishima and Sato fought bravely and came close. However, they both fell into the same trap. They rushed through the middle of the main street, hoping to rush Cementos from the front, but they didn't have enough energy to get through his endless barriers, nor could they think outside the box to devise another strategy. In the end, the first duo was beaten by quirk exhaustion. Asui and Takoyami versus Ectoplasm. Their battlefield is a labyrinth, and they start in the center, and Ectoplasm is brutal in the test. Right off the bat, he summons dozens of clones practically on top of them. Although he has improved a lot, Takoyami's weak point still is melee combat, especially against multiple enemies attacking from all sides. Takoyami and Asui make an excellent team, employing evasive maneuvers while taking down the clones and moving to the exit. In the end, they win the fight with an ingenious strategy by Asui that allows them to evade Ectoplasm's giant bite detention and capture him with a sneak attack from Dark Shadow. The students' first victory. Ada and Ajiro versus Power Loader. This is probably the funniest fight of all. Ada and Ajiro take their practical exam at a dirt field laced with pitfalls from Power Loader. The ground constantly collapses in front of them as Power Loader digs through the ground. The strategy they decide to employ is simple, reckless, and effective. Ada carries Ajiro on his back and uses his Recipro Burst to try to outrun the traps before they can be triggered. Near the end, the ground in front of Ada collapses, and he leaps over it. With his Recipro Extend, Ada throws Ajiro into the escape gate and then keeps Power Loader occupied, giving Ajiro the window needed to escape. Second victory for the students. Yaoyorozu and Todoroki versus Eraserhead. This matchup was well planned. Both Todoroki and Yaoyorozu have the same problems. They rely too much on their quirks. Against Aizawa, who can erase their quirks, they will have to think outside the box. The second point is centered specifically on Yaoyorozu. After her loss to Kaminari in the first fight of the sports festival, Yaoyorozu's self-confidence took a heavy blow. Yet she remains one of the brightest minds in Class 1A. This examination also aims to restore her self-confidence. At first, they have a solid strategy, but like any strategy, it does not survive contact with the enemy. In a few moments, Shouta places them in his line of sight, erasing both quirks. And in close combat, Shouta is simply superior to both of them. They wisely decide to retreat and regroup with the help of a flashbang that Yaoyorozu carries with her. In the end, Yaoyorozu manages to gather enough confidence to share her plan, which ends with Aizawa trapped in his own scarf. They handcuff him, and with that, another victory for the students. Uraraka and Toga versus 13. This match was chosen with Uraraka in mind, as 13 is the perfect person to exploit the weaknesses of Uraraka's quirk, while the duo was chosen because of Toga. While Toga would have no problem fighting most teachers, let's just say she has a weakness for cute girls. And for her, Uraraka is the cutest girl in 1A. Both spend most of the fight on the run, trying to reach the exit. To try to confuse 13, Toga drinks some of Uraraka's blood and turns into her, but this doesn't help much. Near the end of the 30 minutes, both are clinging to a railing, trying not to get sucked into 13's black hole, when Toga finally has an idea and looks at Uraraka smiling. Hey, Yura-chan, I have an idea, Toga says. Anything you have is better than nothing. Uraraka screams back. All right, Toga says, and lets go of the railing, immediately diving toward 13, who stops their quirk so as not to disintegrate it. With the momentum of the dive, Toga hits a kick to 13's chin and already maneuvers herself, pinning them to the ground. Uraraka quickly recovers from the surprise and runs to them, helping to restrain 13 and soon putting the handcuffs on them. Kaminari and Ashido versus Netsu. To sum up the situation in one word, chaos. Ashido and Kaminari ran around the city like headless chickens, while Netsu caused chain reactions with his wrecking ball. For the first 20 minutes, Kaminari and Ashido just run around trying to find a way through. They are about to give up when Kaminari remembers a detail. They are up against Nenzu. Winning in a head-on fight is impossible, simply because it will never be a head-on fight. Nenzu is Izuku's mentor. And if Kaminari has learned one thing, it is that they would not give them a challenge that they have no chance of completing. Thinking for a moment, Kaminari sees a possibility if this city is as detailed as it seems. Mina, melt the floor. Kaminari calls. What? Trust me, just do it. Kaminari insists. Ashido looks at him hesitantly but does as he said, opening a hole in the ground. And they found, just as Kaminari expected, sewers. Ha, I knew it. Nenzu is too meticulous not to put sewers in his fake city. Down here, we will be safe from the wrecking ball. Ashido cheers. But we have less than 10 minutes to escape. Kaminari replied. We need to find the escape gate now. The gate is that way. But if we go through this maze, we will never arrive. Ashido nods as she points south. Then let's go in a straight line. Kaminari replies, grinning. We just need to melt our way out. Ashido nods again. And they leave. Ashido pushes her quirk to the blink of exhaustion, but they get to the escape gate with barely a minute left. Jiru and Kuta versus Present Mike. Teenagers can be pretty cruel, even if accidentally. For Jiru and Kuta, this was an extremely difficult battle. Voice simply outclassed both of their quirks. The fight was almost lost until Kuta managed to overcome his insect phobia. Unfortunately, Mike did not achieve the same feat. That fight ended in victory for the students and a possibly traumatized Present Mike. Hagakure and Shaoji versus Snipe. Hagakure and Shaoji hide from a barrage of bullets in a large corridor filled with stone pillars. The weights don't really limit someone who fights using firearms, and the moment any of them leave cover, bullets will rain down on them. Snipe throws a smoke bomb and fills the arena with smoke, using the opportunity to approach the column where they are hiding while shooting. At that moment, Shaoji switches cover to another pillar and realizes that Hagakure has disappeared. Understanding her plan, Shaoji comes out of hiding and runs at Snipe, who stops him with a shot to the foot. Shaoji raises his hands, which causes Snipe to lower his guard, and suddenly he's handcuffed. When Snipe looks back in surprise, first a pair of pink gloves become visible, followed by a simple white bodysuit. Shaoji was just as surprised as Snipe. After all, Hagakure hadn't told anyone when she had learned to refract light to make her clothes invisible too. Bakugo and Zero versus Midnight. This match was one of the most difficult to decide. Since the beginning of the year, Bakugo has improved greatly in terms of ego, but he still has serious problems with teamwork. Of the whole class, the only person he would normally work well with is Kirishima. Zero is part of Bakugo's group of friends, but this is not enough to ensure good teamwork. Another point is that Bakugo is primarily a short-range attacker. Not that he doesn't have some mid-range alternatives, but his usual fighting style is to charge up and yell die. Against Midnight, coming close is automatic defeat, which will force him to think of another alternative. Zero has a problem of always keeping his first impression. This often results in him giving up before he even starts or underestimating his opponent. And if there is one underestimated teacher at UA, it's Midnight. This is part of the point of her hero persona, to make opponents underestimate her, and she is very good at it. As expected, Zero underestimated her right away. And the only reason he wasn't caught in Midnight's sleep gas was that Bakugo literally blew him out of the way. After a screaming session, they backed away from her. As hot-headed as Bakugo is, he's also intelligent and strategic. He realized right away that he wouldn't be able to win in a head-on battle. However, winning by running away is something he couldn't accept. In the end, despite all their efforts and an ingenious trap made using Zero's ribbon and Bakugo's gauntlets, they were caught by Midnight's sleep gas and ultimately defeated. Denki returns to the observation room just in time to see Shinsu and Monoma leaving for their testing area. Shinsu briefly congratulates him on his victory before nervously following Monoma out of the room. Denki is glad he didn't get too many injuries from his fight with Nenzu. After all, this is the test he most wants to see. Of the brothers, Denki is sure that Zuko is the scariest, but he has never seen how Kuzu fights. Since their training is focused on quirk control, they never sparred. All his experience with grappling comes from his training sessions with Aizawa, where he is usually paired with Todoroki or Takoyami. Since Shinsu has more experience than them, he usually ends up against Aizawa himself. What Denki has apparently forgotten and will soon be reminded of is that Kuzu is a short-range fighter and has known Aizawa since he was 7, as well as being directly mentored by him since he was 10. If he thinks Ifrit is not scary, he's in for a big surprise. Hitoshi and Monoma enter the test area and wait for the bell for the test to start. And as luck would have it, they are in a city, the very type of terrain that is Kuzu's specialty. He's coldly sweating as he looks around, scouting the terrain. He really hopes that Monoma's plan works because while it would be possible to expect some mercy from Zuko, Hitoshi knows that Kuzu won't show any. His breath hitches for a second when he hears the warning. The exam is starting. Okay, time to die. Hitoshi mutters and starts running into the city with Monoma right behind him. Kuzu is sitting on top of a building in the fake city, just waiting for the test to begin, his mask right beside him. With his eyes closed, he felt a gentle breeze on his face, swaying his curls. No matter how many patrols he has done, the moments of anticipation before starting are always his favorite. "Hey, Kuzu," Zuko calls him. "I know it is useless to say this, but go easy on them." "Relax, Zuko," Kuzu says, smiling as he stands up and puts the mask on his face. "I won't traumatize anyone." He undoes the button on the cloak and drops it on the roof of the building. "Much," Zuko sighs. The signal to start the exam sounds, and Kuzu smirks as he turns the switch on his chest. His jumpsuit, boots, gloves, and bracelets change to the color red. He walks calmly to the edge of the roof. "You know what you're doing. Have fun," Zuko says. "I'll let you concentrate." "All right." Kuzu then jumped down the building, sending his grappling hook to the next building. Showtime. Ifrit watched the fake city, calmly waiting for his victims' students to come. There are several paths that students can take to try to pass, but playing the role of the villain has its advantages. For example, villains don't have to worry about collateral damage, so using arson to block the paths and force them to take a route that will lead them to Ifrit is perfectly acceptable. Closing his eyes, Ifrit focuses on all the sounds around him. The sound of crackling flames is the most prominent noise, and he really needs to concentrate on recognizing any other sound in this environment. He doesn't hear anything. Impressive. Not that it's a surprise. Hitoshi has always been sneaky and silent. The surprise is to learn that Monoma is capable of silence as we. Thunk, clank. It seems that he spoke too soon. "Are you an idiot?" Ifrit heard Hitoshi whisper yell. "Where did this can come from? Is Nenzu really that meticulous?" Monoma said a bit louder. "Yes, Nenzu is that meticulous." Sighing, Ifrit followed the voices, which grew louder as the discussion became more heated. Hitoshi knows well that Izuku lives by the motto plus ultra, but this seems a bit much even for him. Being the sneakier of the two, Hitoshi was the one who took the lead, and what he noticed right away was an orange sky and that the temperature seemed to rise as soon as they entered. A few blocks later, the reason became clear. Ifrit had started several fires in the buildings, forcing Hitoshi to either take the only route available or risk passing through entire streets in flames. It's evident that Ifrit is guiding them along the path he wants them to follow, and Hitoshi bets his capture scarf that Ifrit is waiting tight at the end. But with no other choice, Hitoshi follows this path, keeping close to the walls and always looking up. Airborne ambushes are Duality's specialty. Even without Poltergeist, Hitoshi is sure this hasn't changed. As soon as he locates Ifrit, he holds his breath and signals Monoma to stop. He points to the end of the street, where Ifrit was with his eyes closed, probably focusing on the sound. Hitoshi points to an alley conveniently not on fire and slowly enters. Hitoshi leads the way, paying double attention to every step he takes. Things were going well until thunk. Monoma accidentally kicks a can on the floor. Clank. The can hit a wall. The sound made was minimal, but at that moment, it sounded like the biggest noise on the face of the earth. "Are you an idiot?" Hitoshi whisper yells at Monoma. "Where did this can come from? Is Nenzu really that meticulous?" Monoma asks louder than Hitoshi. "Shut up, idiot. He'll hear us." Hitoshi says back, even louder. In retrospect, starting a discussion at this point was a bad idea, but Hitoshi was already very stressed about this examination. He was bound to snap at some point. Completely forgetting that Ifrit is literally on the next street, the two begin to argue, which soon becomes name-calling. Again, not the brightest moment of either. "Hey," they hear it just above them and immediately fall silent. "Are you two even trying?" They slowly raise their heads, and just above them, they see Ifrit hanging upside down from a chain, in a pose similar to Spider-Man. The mask, plus the dim lighting in the alley, made it impossible to see his face. But even so, Hitoshi knew that he was grinning underneath the mask. The only thing visible is two yellow lights, which Hitoshi believes are his eyes. Without saying another word, Ifrit shakes his arm, and the chain retracts into his bracelet, causing him to fall right between them, balancing on his hands. Hitoshi barely sees a glimmer, and suddenly he feels a burning in his chest and is flying toward a wall. He briefly sees the same thing happening to Monoma. When he regains his breath, he notices a footprint like burn on his costume, right on his chest, and in front of him, Ifrit wriggling back on his feet. Ifrit starts walking to Monoma, and Hitoshi takes advantage of the opening to try to attack him. "You're too naive," Hitoshi hears, and before he knows it, he's off the ground and falling on top of Monoma. "I suppose you don't want to answer a question for him, right?" Monoma's voice asks. "Nice try, Toshi." Ifrit signs at him. Looks like the voice modulator is working. Hitoshi and Monoma barely have time to roll to the side before one more kick would hit them. Ifrit politely waits for them to stand up and then makes a come motion with his hand. Monoma and Hitoshi look at each other and nod. The first choice of the day they completely agree on. They take a stance and narrow their eyes, then turn and run. In the corner of his eye, Hitoshi sees Ifrit raising a finger. 1, 2, 3. They turn the corner, and Ifrit's voice is drowned out by the sound of the crackling flames. Is he following us? Monoma asks. He was counting. I think he is giving us a head start. Hitoshi replies. Suddenly they begin to hear laughter, or rather a maniacal cackling. They stop running and slowly turn around. The image they see will be in their next nightmare. Ifrit's head was engulfed in flames, and he chased after them as he spun his chains, also on fire. Nope. Hitoshi screams as he turns around and starts running. Ifrit is having the time of his life. When on patrol, he always needs to take down and capture the villain as quickly and efficiently as possible, so he usually doesn't have time to enjoy it. But here, he has never had so much fun on a hunt. Toshi's reaction when he saw Ifrit approaching with his head and chains on fire was completely hilarious. Ifrit pursues them relentlessly until they split up at a fork in the road, each going their own way. Without much time to lose, Ifrit follows Monoma, and taking advantage of the blonde's distraction, he climbs the rooftops. Shortly afterward, Monoma stops running and looks back. Seeing no one, he sighs with relief. He doesn't even look up. Didn't Hitoshi warn him about Duality's preference for aerial ambushes? Well, regardless of who is to blame, Monoma is an easy target at the moment. Finding a good angle, Izuku throws his grappling hook and swings with the chain, aiming a kick at Monoma's back. The attack knocks Monoma down, and Izuku immediately takes advantage to wrap him in chains and hang him from a pole. Your plan was decent. If you had managed to keep quiet, you probably would have been able to get past me, Ifrit says as he scans the area for Hitoshi. But you still missed the point of this test. What do you mean? Monoma asks. Ifrit opens his mouth, but before he says anything, he closes it and smirks. Nice try. He signs, then he looks around and starts talking, addressing no one in particular, thinking about the pairs and their matchups. What did they all have in common? Ifrit says. Why put the two students who hate each other the most against someone who basically prevents them from using their quirks? What is the point of this exam? Without saying anything else, Ifrit leaves Monoma hanging and goes into an alley, pretending to go look for Hitoshi. He goes back to the rooftops. It doesn't take more than a minute for him to see Hitoshi appearing. Unlike Monoma, Hitoshi stares at the rooftops all the time, and Ifrit has to lie down so that he is not visible. As much as he loves red, this isn't a good color for sneaking around. Where's Ifrit? Hitoshi asks Monoma. He just entered that alley. Monoma jerks his head towards the alley Ifrit entered. I think he went to search for you. All right, Hitoshi says and tries to loosen the chains holding Monoma. Ifrit chooses this moment to jump off the building with the same attack that knocked Monoma down. Monoma's eyes bug out, and he shouts at Hitoshi. Behind you. Hitoshi doesn't question. He just rolls out of the way. Ifrit hits the kick right on the pole that Monoma was hanging from, knocking the pole down. Not bad, Toshi, Ifrit says. But tell me, why aren't you giving your all? I am giving my all. Hitoshi replies, frowning. Really? Because as far as I can tell, you have one more trick up your sleeve, Ifrit says, smirking. Ninth. Hitoshi's eyes widen at this, and he looks at Monoma, who is still trying to regain her bearings after the fall. What are you doing? Hitoshi asks. You won't win if you don't use it, Toshi. Ifrit signs at him. What are you afraid of? You know what happened last time. Hitoshi replies. And I also know how much you trained since then. Ifrit says. So, he jumps at Hitoshi. Show me what you can do. Hitoshi's eyes glow, and his body is covered with purple sparks. Ifrit grins and attacks with a flaming kick. Hitoshi quickly dodges and leaps toward Monoma, grabbing the chains and breaking them with one for all. The gate, hurry. Hitoshi shouts at Monoma, then lunges at Ifrit again. Monoma gets up and starts running while Hitoshi attacks Ifrit furiously. With the addition of one for all, Ifrit has to be much more careful with his attacks, but in terms of experience and skill, Ifrit is still far above him. Ifrit parries one of the punches and responds with a judo throw. But to his surprise, Hitoshi responds by twisting in the middle of the throw and hitting a kick to Ifrit's face, which takes off his mask at the cost of a dislocated shoulder. Ifrit looks at Hitoshi, confused. That move was completely illogical. Hitoshi dislocated a shoulder, only to land a kick that barely hit Ifrit. Ifrit loosens his chains and approaches Hitoshi to restrain him when he feels a touch on his face. He looks to the side and sees Monoma touching him. Gotcha. The blonde smirks and raises his arms, and Ifrit's chains begin to move on their own, wrapping around him and trapping him. Your quirk is quite handy, sensei. Hitoshi gets up quickly, wincing from the pain in his shoulder, and runs up to Ifrit, quickly slapping the handcuffs on his hands. Looking between the two, Ifrit smiles softly as the voice announces, Shinsu Hitoshi, and Monoma Nito captured the villain. A little help here, Kuzu says as he gets up, still wrapped in chains. The magic word. Zuko teases and starts laughing at Kuzu's pout. All right. Zuko loosens the chains that are retracted into the bracelets and pulls the keys from Hitoshi's pocket, unlocking the handcuffs. Then Kuzu walks over to Hitoshi and, being careful of his dislocated shoulder, picks him up in his arms to take him to Granny Chio. Congratulations, Toshi. I'm proud of you, Kuzu says with a soft smile. And if anyone notices tears in Hitoshi's eyes, Kuzu politely ignores them. The sky was beginning to darken, indicating the end of the afternoon and, with it, the end of the Ifrit patrol. All in all, it was a very quiet afternoon. Day patrols generally have fewer criminals than night patrols, especially on routes that heroes usually take. Few criminals have the courage, or the nerve, to commit crimes in broad daylight. Help. Unfortunately, few doesn't mean none. Running to where he heard the screams, Ifrit finds a couple, a woman on the floor crying, and a man with his hand on her abdomen. Ifrit could see blood, but it wasn't a lot. Ifrit runs up to them, but the man points forward. She'll be fine, I'm a medic, the man says. But he's taking our son. You need to save him. Ifrit follows the finger and sees a man running almost at the end of the street. He was huge and covered with orange fur, especially around his neck. A lion mutation, probably. He had a child over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. All right, hang in there, Ifrit said and started running after the man. Despite his size and possessing the mutation of a predator, the man was quite slow. Even with his head start, Ifrit managed to catch up with him before he could enter the, completely not suspicious at all, black van parked on the corner with its door open. Ifrit leaps over him, blocking his path, and immediately lands a flaming dropkick on his chest. In a surprise, the lion throws the child up, and Ifrit takes advantage of the gap to catch the boy. Ifrit hugs the boy, cradling his head on his shoulder. The van simply drives off, leaving its partner behind. SHH, it's okay. You're safe now, Ifrit murmurs. The lion starts getting up. Poltergeist. On it, Poltergeist replies. From his cloak, an arrow starts to float and plunges straight into the lion's thigh, which lets out a howl of pain. A few seconds later, he faints due to the tranquilizer in the arrow. Ifrit ignores it and continues to calm the child. Don't worry, he won't hurt you anymore, Ifrit says. You've been very brave. The boy looks at him with those big blue eyes. Eyes that Ifrit can't help but be reminded of Zuko's eyes years ago. The boy turns his head, seeing the fainted lion on the ground, and then looks back at Ifrit. His eyes fill with tears, and he buries his face in Ifrit's shoulder, hugging him and sobbing uncontrollably. Ifrit feels something strange when the kid puts his hands on the back of his neck but ignores it for now. Aye. Yes, saw the boy tries talking, but can't formulate any phrase between his sobs. You've been so brave, Ifrit keeps saying. What is your name? Araki. The boy replies. Agai Araki. Why you a hero? I am, Ifrit replies, smiling under his mask. I'm Ifrit. You have a cool mask, Araki says, the stutter slowly dying down as he calms down. Thank you, kiddo, Ifrit replies. I love this mask too. It's my favorite. Are mommy and daddy? Araki asks, looking around. They are fine. Don't worry, Ifrit assures. Let's get you back to them. Okay, kiddo. Araki nods as Ifrit starts walking. He holds the kid in his right arm, and with his left, he lifts the lion and throws him over his left shoulder. Wow, you're strong, the boy says in awe. I'm a hero. Ifrit laughs. I have to be strong to save people. Wow, the kid practically had stars in his eyes. With each passing second, it was harder not to see a younger version of Zuko in him. When he arrives back where the boy's parents were, an ambulance is already on the scene, and paramedics are treating the woman. The father is pacing nervously, which fortunately means he's not hurt. Daddy, Araki calls, and the man instantly turns to them and starts running. Araki, the father calls and runs to them. And as soon as he's in range, Araki practically jumps into his father's arms. Thank God, you're okay. Then he looks at Ifrit. Thank you, you saved my son. That's my job. Ifrit replies. I'm just happy the little guy is okay. He's really brave, you know. That he is. The father laughs. I can't thank you enough for this. You already did. Ifrit replies. You work in the hero wing of Mustafu's hospital, don't you? The man nods. You were one of those who saved my life and my dad's life some time ago. I think we can call it even. Agai Kawahara. The man replies. I remember you. Duality, right. That's right. Duality Ifrit, Kuzu says, then looks at the paramedics approaching them. Now, Araki-kun, can you let the medics take a look at you? They are here to make sure you're okay. Araki holds on tighter to his father, clearly afraid of being taken away from him again. Please Araki, it'll be okay. Agai-san tries to convince his son, but he only shakes his head harder, tears beginning to well into his eyes again. Araki-kun, can you look at me for a second? Ifrit asks. When the boy looks at him, Ifrit slowly takes off his mask. My name is Kuzu, he whispers to the kid. But you have to keep it a secret, okay? Araki nods vigorously. Promise, he says, holding his pinky finger. Ifrit laughs and links his pinky with the kid's. Then he presses his mask on the kid's hands. You can have it, Ifrit explains when Araki looks at him, confused. It'll keep you safe, just like it keeps me. Araki's eyes widen, then he hugs the mask. Thank you, he whispers and finally lets the paramedics take him. Thank you for doing this, Agai-sen says. I'll be sure to give back your mask when he calms down. Don't bother, Ifrit replies. He can keep it. I'm sure it'll make him happy. He smiles at the man. You should go with them. I will stay here and make sure that Sleeping Beauty, he points to the lion man, here doesn't wake up and try to escape before the police arrive. Then he takes a card and gives it to the man. If you need me, you can call this number. Thank you again. I'll never forget this, Agai-san says as he bows to Ifrit. Then he enters the ambulance with his wife and son, and they leave. Sometimes I forget how much of a big brother you are. Ifrit could feel the amusement in his tone. Shut up, Zu, Ifrit mutters as he grabs a face mask. Agai-san has seen their face before, so Ifrit doesn't mind taking the mask off before him. But he's not about to show his face to random policemen. No, thank you. As soon as the police arrive, they take the lion man away, and Izuku leaves the interrogation in Tsukachi's hands. The detective will find out whether it was a random kidnapping or if they wanted Araki for some specific reason. With this situation resolved, Ifrit finally returns to finish his patrol and goes home. For some reason, Izuku feels more tired than usual, so they end up going to bed earlier. The next day, Kuzu wakes up with a strange feeling of emptiness inside him, like something is missing. He sits in bed and stretches, but when he puts his arms down, he feels something that shouldn't be on his bed. He slowly looks to his side. What? He mutters as he sees the sleeping kid at his side. But not just any kid. This kid is identical to him, even wearing the exact same Present Mike-themed pajamas. Hey, Zu, have I gone crazy, or is there another Izuku in front of me? Zuku doesn't reply. Kuzu concentrates, but he only hears silence in his mind. Not the usual silence of when Zuku is sleeping, complete silence. There is nothing. Zuku is not here. Zuku. Kuzu tries again but is still met with silence. Come on, Zuku, this isn't funny. He's getting louder with each word. Zuku, Zuku. Suddenly, the other Izuku on the bed stirs awake. He sits up, rubbing his right eye. Kuzu, he says in a confused tone. Isn't it too early for all this yelling? And then his hand freezes when he notices Kuzu, and he starts gaping at him. Zuku, Kuzu tentatively asks. The other Izuku nods. Kuzu nods back. What the fuck happened? Kuzu curses. At that moment, the door bursts open, and Shouta barges in, eyes glowing and scarf floating. He looks from one to the other a few times and then sighs. I'll prepare an extra plate. Then he leaves the room without another word. That Shouta didn't even question seeing his son cloned in front of him is a testament to how many crazy things an underground hero sees on a daily basis. Zuku and Kuzu look at each other and nod. Then they get up. Kuzu has to admit that it is very strange to see Zuku beside him instead of feeling him in his mind all the time. They get a little in the way of their morning routine. After all, at this point, they have two bodies, which naturally makes them take twice as long to get ready. When they reach the kitchen, they see Toshi sitting at the table with a coffee mug in his hands and looking as awake as a sloth. Good morning, Toshi. Zuku greets him as he goes to the stove like always. Morning, Bunny. Toshi greets back. Morning, Toshi. Kuzu greets as he sits down in the chair next to him. Morning. Then he freezes and looks at Kuzu sitting beside him. Then at Zuku starting to fry the eggs, then back to Kuzu. Why are there actually two of you? Kuzu and Zuku shrug together, and Toshi looks back at his mug. I should have prepared a second pot. Toshi mutters, and Kuzu laughs. Kuzu gets up and starts preparing a second coffee pot for them. A few moments later, Shouta enters and leans on the counter. Kuzu fills a mug and slides it through the counter to Shouta. Thanks, Shouta mumbles and downs the scalding coffee like it was water. No problem, Kuzu replies. A few minutes later, they sit down to have breakfast, and Kuzu will repeat it. It's very strange to be sitting next to Zuku like that. When one of them eats, they both taste it. But at this moment, they are eating separately. Something typical for anyone is an entirely foreign experience for them. But besides that, Zuku is still a great cook, as always. After breakfast, everyone sits in the living room. Shouta and Toshi sit on the couch, and Zuku and Kuzu share the armchair, trying to stay as close as possible despite being separated. So, what the hell happened to you? Toshi asks. Wish I knew. Kuzu replies. We woke up like that. Zuku adds. Even apart, the custom of completing each other's sentences is still there. But before we try to find out what happened to us, there is one vitally important thing that I have to do. You have? Kuzu asks. What is it? Zuku gets up from his armchair with an expression as serious as the one when he fought with Stain and looks at Kuzu. Understanding the message, Kuzu gets up too, and then green suddenly comes into his line of sight, and he feels a pair of arms around his waist. This is the first time I can truly hug you, Kuzu, Zuku says as he buries his face on Kuzu's shoulder. Like hell I'm going to miss it. Kuzu is surprised for a moment, but he soon returns the hug, rubbing circles on Zuku's back with one hand and running the other through his hair. They hold the embrace for a while until interrupted by a ringing phone. Izuku's cell phone. Kuzu picks up the cell phone and checks the number. An unknown number. Hello. Kuzu answers the call. Aizawa-kun. Kuzu recognizes the voice easily. It's Agai-san. Kuzu did not expect a call from him so soon. Agai-san, did something happen? Is his wife okay? Is Araki okay? Everyone is fine, Aizawa-kun. Agai assured. It's about the card you gave me. It says here that you are also a quirk counselor. Yes, we are, Kuzu replied. Why? Well, it seems that Araki's quirk has manifested. Agai explains, having a sense of where this is going. Kuzu puts his cell phone on speakerphone so that the others, and especially Zuku, can hear as well. Yesterday he touched one of the nurses that were treating him, and today there's a clone of the nurse. Well, this explains a few things. Kuzu mutters, are you still at the hospital? Yeah, they kept him and my wife in observation during the night. Agai replies, all right, we'll be there in 1 hour. Kuzu says, for now, just keep him calm. Thank you again, Aizawa-kun. Agai says. Then Kuzu hangs up the call and looks at Shouta. Well, it looks like the mystery is solved. Kuzu says, only you, problem children. Shouta sighs and gets up. Shouta is an observant man. It would be impossible to survive as an underground hero if he wasn't. He is constantly vigilant for risks, always knowing who is around, how many possible exits are in every room he enters, how to quickly neutralize anyone he might have to fight. Some call it paranoia. He calls it vigilance. People have always been Shouta's weak point, and he hates having weak points. That is why he has practiced his people reading skills so much. Nowadays, he is second only to Tsukachi. But there is one person in particular that Shouta has learned to read better than any book. His son, Izuku. Shouta knows every detail of Izuku's personality, possibly even better than they know themselves. His sons are a completely open book for Shouta. They are also trouble magnets, and this is as clear a fact as the sky being blue or Nenzu being a deed. That's why when Shouta heard Kuzu scream this morning, he immediately ran into their room. Seeing two Izukus in the room, wearing the exact same clothes, was a surprise at first, but as soon as he saw their eyes, he understood the situation. Leave it to the problem children to somehow get hit by a quirk capable of separating them. Shouta pretended not to notice how anxious the two Izukus had been all morning. At every possible moment, they were holding hands. And when it wasn't possible, they were always at least in each other's line of sight, as if one of them would disappear if they lost sight of each other. Shouta made no comment. He has always known how codependent Zuku and Kuzu are on each other. During the worst years of their lives, the only good thing they had was each other. Never in their lives have they been apart. After all, they are the two sides of the coin called Izuku. At this moment, Shouta may not understand their feeling, but he knows they feel incomplete. Shouta also pretends that his heart doesn't melt when he sees the two embracing. Really embracing, for the first time in their lives. If he took at least 20 pictures of the moment, he simply sent the pictures to Hitoshi, and the two made a silent vow never to speak of it. Well, at least the mystery didn't last long. But the fact that it was an accident with a newly manifested quirk makes things a bit more difficult. If the effect is only temporary, things will resolve themselves soon enough. Otherwise, things get a little more complicated. Shouta drives Zuku and Kuzu to Mustafu's hospital. Despite the anxiety that the two have not stopped showing for a single second, Shouta also sees the determination in their eyes, and that is more than enough for him to know. Izuku will be fine. Agai-sen paced back and forth at the hospital entrance, occasionally looking out over the parking lot. As soon as he sees Zuku and Kuzu, his eyes widen, and he runs to them. Were you affected too? He asks. Yes, but it's a bit more complicated than that. Kuzu replies. You already know about our condition, right? Zuku says, pointing between himself and Kuzu. Apparently, Araki separated us. It seems your son has a fascinating quirk, Agai-san. Kuzu smiles at the man. Can we see him? Of course, follow me, Agai-san says and starts guiding them through the corridors. Dad stays waiting for them in the main hall. How should I call you, Aizawa-kun? Either Ifrit and Poltergeist, or Kuzu and Zuku. Kuzu says, just don't spread our name around. Zuku completes. Deal. Agai-san chuckles. Here we are. My wife is also here, and she wanted to meet you. Agai-san opens the door and enters, holding the door open for Zuku and Kuzu. Kuzu enters first, and Zuku follows. Ifrit-san, a cheerful voice called as soon as Kuzu entered. The voice came from one of the two beds in the room. The first bed had a woman with an IV fixed to her arm. Black hair, eyes as blue as the sky, and slightly pale skin. In the next bed was the child they met yesterday. Curly brown hair like her father's, big blue eyes like her mother's, slightly tanned skin, a smile from ear to ear. The kid was hugging a very familiar skull mask. Hello, Araki-kun. Kuzu smiles as he approaches the bed. How are you feeling? I feel better. And mommy is fine, too, Araki replies, pointing to the bed next to him. The woman gives Kuzu a warm smile. I told you it would keep you safe. Kuzu taps the mask on Araki's hand. Thank you, Araki says, giving the mask back to Kuzu. It's yours now, Araki-kun. Kuzu grins as the kid's eyes widen. I'm not taking back a gift. Araki nods and jumps at Kuzu, giving him a tight hug. Kuzu sits on the bed, with Araki holding onto him, and looks at the woman on the other bed. Thank you for saving my son, the woman says and starts to bow, but Kuzu stops her. It's okay, and you shouldn't try to move like this yet. The wound she received from the lion man was not very deep, but it's better that she doesn't aggravate her injuries. I'm glad you're all right, Agai-san. You can call me Kyoko, dear. It'll be easier to talk like this. She smiled, then looked at Zuku. Is that your brother? This is my little brother, Zuku, better known by the public as Poltergeist. We have exactly the same age, Kuzu. Zuku replies indignantly. No one is older. I'm still the big brother. Kuzu smirks. Am I wrong? Zuku pouts and looks away but doesn't try to refute Kuzu. I know you too well, Zu. We share a brain, after all. Not at the moment, Zuku mutters. I don't need to be in your head to know what you're thinking. Kuzu replies, pulling Zuku into a side hug with his free hand. Wait, share a brain? Kyoko-san asks. Like, were you the same person before? Did I? Araki asks, looking down at his hands. I'm sorry. He tries to pull away from Kuzu, but Kuzu holds him. Nope. Kuzu flicks Araki's forehead. You did nothing wrong, Araki-kun, so you have nothing to apologize for. But the kid had tears shining behind his eyes as he looked at Kuzu like a kicked puppy. You just got your quirk, Araki. Accidents will happen. Kuzu smiles warmly at him. Also, I should be thanking you. Why? Araki asks shyly. Zuku and I are different. We are the same person, but we have different consciences. Kuzu explains. We are two people in the same body, and as much as we love each other, we could never hug each other. He carefully puts Araki back in the bed and walks to Zuku, opening his arms. Until today, Zuku says as he embraces his brother. So I say the same. Thank you, Araki-kun. You're our hero. If it had not been clear that Araki is an emotional child, the way in which he jumped on Zuku to hug him said it all. Kuzu has to hold back from laughing at Zuku's panicked expression. Zuku is not bad with children by any means, but he lacks the big brother instincts that Kuzu honed throughout his life. Zuku is simply clueless when it comes to kids. That's why usually, Kuzu is the one who deals with the younger victims. What do I do? Zuku asks, panicked, while Kuzu hides his giggles behind his hand. Just keep holding him. Kuzu replies between his giggles. You're doing great, Zu. Another 5 minutes pass until everyone calms down, and Kuzu talks to Araki again. Araki-kun, do you know why your dad called me here? He looks at his father, then shakes his head. Zuku and I are licensed quirk counselors. This means we help kids learn about their quirks and how to use them. He explains. So, do you want to work with me in learning about your quirk? Yes, please. Araki replies excitedly. Then we can start right now, Kuzu says and turns to the parents. Can you two explain your quirks to me? Agai-san is the first to explain. My quirk is called fragmentation. He explains. Basically, I can separate the different parts of my emotions. I use my quirk primarily to separate my private and professional life. This explains how he never seems to be affected by the astonishing things a doctor sees on a daily basis. My quirk is called cloning. Kyoko-san touches the pillow on the bed with her left hand and extends her right hand. A completely identical pillow appears. When I touch something with my left hand, I can create a copy of it with my right hand. It only works with inanimate objects. If I try to copy a person, I will only create a dead body. Then she takes the two pillows and puts them together, making the copy disappear. The copies only disappear if I do this. Interesting. Zuku hums as he writes everything in his notebook. You said he cloned a nurse too, right? Agai-san nods. How did the nurse react? Both of them, Kuzu asks. They had opposite reactions, in fact. Agai-san explains, rubbing his jaw with his right hand. One of them had a panic attack, and the other simply helped the first one calm down and then continued working normally. She asked me to call her when the situation was sorted out. Kuzu and Zuku look at each other and nod. Judging from what you said, I would say that Araki-kun's quirk is a fusion of your and your wife's quirks, Agai-san. Zuku says. And much stronger too. If we are right, it means that when he activates his quirk on a person, he creates a copy of the person and splits his personality in two, creating two separate consciousnesses. Each consciousness goes to a body. Kuzu adds, since Zuku and I already had two consciousnesses, he just split us. I wonder if he can also copy inanimate objects like Kyoko-san. Probably the only way we can get back together will be when he learns how to do it. Zuku started mumbling. Is it restricted to only one copy? How often can a person's personality be fragmented? Is there even a limit? Could he use it on himself? What about the quirk? Is it split like the personality, or can both of us use the whole quirk? What about Zuku? Come on, we can test the theories when we really start the counseling. Kuzu stops him. Right, sorry. Zuku smiles shyly as he scratches the back of his head. I got carried away. Don't worry. Agai-san waves him off. I won't pretend that I understood half of what you said, but it sounds like you have a good idea of what to do. We have. Zuko nods firmly. We promise your son is in good hands. I also know someone who probably can help us learn how Araki's quirk works. Kuzu snaps his fingers. For now, when can we start? Whenever you're available is good enough for us. Kyoko-san says. Araki's school hours are very flexible, and between patrols, classes, and counseling, you must have very little free time. Don't worry, at the moment, everyone we advise is my student at UA. We are only teaching assistants, and our patrols are flexible. For now, how about we do the sessions daily in the afternoon? Zuko suggests. When he starts to get a better grasp of his quirk, we can start doing weekly, then only monthly sessions to follow his development. It works for me. Agai-san nods. What about you, Araki? You're going to have to work hard, honey. Kyoko-san adds. Are you up for the task? I am. Araki replies firmly. I want to learn. Then welcome aboard, champion. Kuzu grins. I promise to help you. We can start as soon as you're discharged. The more you rest, the sooner it'll be. Hearing this, Araki rushes back to bed. Kuzu laughs and adjusts the blanket. We'll be leaving for now, Zuko says, but you can call us as soon as he's ready to start. Agai-san walks them back to the hospital lobby. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing for my family. It's my pleasure to help. Kuzu waves him off. We love our job. Zuko nods. This is how we help people. You are already Araki's favorite hero. This morning he was asking me if I could buy some of your merch for his birthday. Hearing this, Zuko and Kuzu both blush. It's one thing knowing people buy their merch, but hearing a father say to them how much his son likes them is completely different. Thank you again, Ifrit-kun and Poltergeist-kun. Just keep saving lives, and we're even. Zuko says. We may have a license that says we are pro-heroes, but it's you doctors who are our heroes. Kuzu adds. Bye, Agai-san. It was nice to talk to you again. See you soon. Zuko waved. With that settled, they leave. It seems that they are stuck like this for a while. They might as well take advantage of the situation. Tomorrow is a school day. How freaked out will the students be to see them like this? It was clear that the Izukus were up to something at the very moment that only Zuko entered the homeroom this morning. Itoshi already knew that the gremlins were up to something. But what exactly, he doesn't know yet. However, knowing them, Hitoshi just hopes that the class doesn't end up too traumatized. The first thing Shouta does in the morning is to announce the results of the midterm exams. Fortunately, you all passed your theory exams. Some by the skin of their teeth, but all of you did. Shouta must be feeling pretty generous this morning because he doesn't even send one of his glances when the class starts celebrating. As for the practical exams, those that failed were Kirishima, Sadu, Shiro, and Bakugo. And therefore, about the summer camp, Kirishima and Shiro look down in disappointment, Sadu in acceptance, and Bakugo in anger as usual. Everyone is going. Shouta gives the class his logical ruse grin. What? The class screams in unison. The point of the summer camp is for training. Therefore, those who have failed are the ones who need to go the most. Shouta explains. It was another logical ruse. The class groans in annoyance. But Hitoshi was already expecting that. After that, in the rest of the free time, the class begins to arrange a trip to the market to buy supplies for the summer camp, and they invite everyone to the class. This is the kind of event that Hitoshi would usually refuse. But he is trying to be a little more social, so he eventually agrees to go. In the end, the only one who goes is Todoroki, who is visiting his mother on the day. Even Zuko says he's going. And if Zuko goes, Kuzu is sure to go too. And speaking of the gremlins, the first trolling of the day comes when Kuzu knocks on the door and opens it as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Hey, Dad, Netsu-sensei asked me to give you this, Kuzu says as he drops a stack of papers on Shouta's desk. Hey, Zu. Itoshi has to hold back his laughter as the class starts looking between Zuko and Kuzu, with expressions varying between confusion, surprise, fear, and panic. We need to start preparing for the heroics class. Coming, Zuko jumps from his chair and starts following Kuzu. See you in heroics. He waves at the class and leaves, ignoring the chaos the two left behind. What the heck? Kaminari is the first one to scream as the pair leaves. There's actually two now. What did I do to deserve two of the nerd? Bakugo asks as he slams his head on the desk. Isn't one already enough? Sensei, what happened to Izuku? Yamomo, always the voice of reason, asks. But sadly for her, Shouta also thrives on the chaos his problem children cause. You'll have to ask him, Shouta says just as the bell rings. He's quick to leave before anyone else can try to question him. For today's heroics class, All Might announced as the class gathered at the PE field, we'll be playing a team tag game. The class murmurs among themselves, trying to understand what the heck a child's game has to do with hero training. Some are excited to play, but no one dares to use the word fun. Not when they can see Aizawa's sleeping bag not far from there. The goal here is quite simple, Kuzu says, calling the class attention back. Build your communication and collaboration. Zuko replies as he raises his right arm. A dodgeball floats to his hands. The rules are as follows. All might start as Zuko and Kuzu took some space from each other. 2 students will be chosen as it or taggers. One of you will be carrying the ball. Zuko spins the ball on his index finger. The taggers need to tag all other players by touching them with the dodgeball, but only the tagger that is not carrying the ball can move. As he explains, Kuzu starts running across the field. Zuko throws the ball to him, and the moment Kuzu catches it, he stops running and Zuko starts. They pass the ball from one to the other until they reach All Might's side, and Kuzu touches him with the ball. The moment you are caught, you become one of the taggers. The game ends when the last student is caught. Any questions? No one raises a hand. Great. Zuko claps his hands. Then let's start this game. Does anyone volunteer to be the first pair? Kuzu asks and is met by 20 pairs of raised hands. All right, drawing lots we are. In the first draw, the chosen duo turns out to be Uraraka and Shoto, which right away ends with them losing the ball when Uraraka accidentally throws it weightlessly. After that, Zuko pays extra attention to the balls in case he needs to retrieve them. The second attempt was much better than the first. Uraraka and Todoroki developed a solid strategy where basically, Todoroki used his eyes to block the way while Uraraka approached and tagged the opponent. They managed to capture most of the class with this trick alone, with the exception of those with high mobility like Shiro and Katsuki and those with great offensive power like Takoyami and, again, Katsuki. At the end of the game, the last 2 to be caught were Yaomomo and Katsuki, and so in the next game, they were the taggers. Their strategy was simple, efficient, and brutal. Momo created a portable cannon to shoot the ball and took care of creating the necessary openings so that Katsuki could tag the student. This turned out to be the fastest game of the day. The next pair was Ashido and Hagakure. It didn't work out very well. Ashido constantly lost sight of Hagakure, so he couldn't pass the ball and lost a lot of time. This round ended with them only managing to catch 5 students. To close the day, Izuku participated in the last round, the taggers being Zuko and Kuzu. Unfair, maybe, but they can't let this chance go by. Who knows if they'll ever have another opportunity like this. As soon as the round started, Kuzu threw the ball to Zuko and started running. The students spread out, trying to put as much distance between them as possible. Kuzu immediately chased after Sadu, blocking his path and, receiving the ball, tagging him. Soon after, he threw the ball back to Zuko, who was already right next to Kuda, and tagged him. Why don't we make things more interesting? Zuko said as he threw the ball to Kuzu and floated up. Kuzu, 7 hours. Kuzu threw the ball back to Zuko and ran in the direction he said, coming face to face with Katsuki. Raising his hand, he took the ball and tagged the Pomeranian. Then he threw the ball back to Zuko, who threw it to Sadu just in time for the Sugarman to tag Kirishima and Shiro, who were standing too close to each other. In less than 2 minutes, 5 students were already caught, and they didn't slow down. With Zuko acting as an information center and air support, the taggers quickly ambushed the runners one by one. Hitoshi and Denki lasting the longest in this round due to them working together to keep the other taggers at bay. At the end of the class, the students were all laughing, so Zuko and Kuzu considered the class a success. Truth be told, the goal of building communication and collaboration among the students was actually real. That was not the only goal of this class. The students have been extremely anxious and stressed in the last few weeks because of the midterm exams. Izuku and All Might made this game to give them a chance to have fun. While Izuku agrees with their dad that hero training is not meant to be fun, what they mean is that the students should take it seriously. Not that they have no right to be kids. They do deserve the chance to have fun once in a while. Zuko was just finishing writing the plans for Araki-kun's training when he heard a specific notification coming from his cell phone. He and Kuzu set up this sound to play whenever they receive something from their mysterious contact from the League of Villains. We need to meet in person. Zuko quickly calls Kuzu before replying to the message. Duality. Why? Did something happen? Sensei is starting to suspect. He's not telling me everything anymore. I know he's planning something soon, and it has to do with the summer camp. This is problematic. Summer camp cannot be cancelled. Not only would it harm the students, if they cancel summer camp just like that, this sensei will eventually notice that something is wrong, which will put the mysterious contact and the person he wants to protect at risk. Duality. All right, how do you want to meet? And when? The Mo. I can walk around relatively inconspicuous, so long as no one recognizes me. Duality. Tomorrow we will be there with Class 1A. We'll be the only outsider there, so you should recognize us easily, even without the mask. We don't know if any of them might recognize you, though. That's a bridge we'll have to cross when we get to it. I'm desperate enough to try. Duality. Can you escape if necessary? Easy. I won't get caught unless I want to. Duality. Then, if necessary, let's pretend it's an attack, but only as a last resort. All right. I'm sure you'll know who I am when you see me. I hope it doesn't change things. Duality. We already promised to help you. It won't change because you tried to kill us before. The messages stop there. But Zuko knows that he has read. What do you think? Zuko asks. It could be a trap, although I highly doubt it. Kuzu replies. They don't know yet that we are separated for the moment. Let's use this to our advantage. I will meet with them. You stay in the shadows until I confirm their identity and intention. We need a key word, in case it's clean or not. Zuko replied. Oh, I have the perfect ones. Kuzu smirked. How about? Tamura observes the new recruits interacting in the bar. The, dubbed by Sensei, Vanguard Action Squad. The members are the villains: Twice, Spinner, Mr. Compress, Magni, Muscular, Mustard, and Moonfish. Sensei says that he will have one more member joining soon, but Tamura doesn't even know the name of this secret party member. Some of them, Tamura managed to communicate with before Sensei could, and they agreed to participate in Tamura's plans. Something Tamura cannot accept, however, is the kid. Mustard is barely 14. He shouldn't be messing with villains. He's only going to get himself killed. This kid was a surprise that Tamura was sure was a test from Sensei. Tamura has to admit that the boy is powerful. The crowd control potential of his quirk will make him incredibly useful for the attack the League is planning on the hero brats. And this is exactly the problem. Tamura doesn't even know what the objective of the attack is. Sensei has been completely secretive with his plans. It's obvious that he suspects Tamura, but it doesn't matter. One way or another, the plan has to work. Tamura refuses to remain Sensei's avatar.